Alright, here I am on YouTube and now Twitch and Kick. So for today's stream, I should just be writing and moving ahead with the draft, but I'm kind of in one of those reflexive, analytical types of modes, and I want to go through everything that I've written so far in this draft and grab a handy dandy notebook. So you would think I would have one near me. Yeah, grab a notebook and just start jotting things down to catch when my first round of edits, which is going to be mostly story fixing. So for now, I'm going to open up Word. Oh, folders. There we go. Book 1, rewrite, Drowning, Rising Tide. Okay. And already I can see that this is a mess. Yeah, I'm all over the place with this, and that's where organizing is going to be a big deal. But let's go to the Chapter 1 doc, open that up, and then move that over here, and write my first prompt for ChatGPT. I will be pasting in the draft of a novel I am working on. Novel. Really gotta get me a keyboard. I need a breakdown of plot as well as holes to watch for honest critiques. Suggested notes like an editor or beta reader would offer. This is to help me get on track and motivate me to finish this sooner rather than later. Originally, I wanted this done and edited. I cannot type for shit right now. Edited by now. The story keeps expanding around itself. Currently currently I am nearing the 2/3 portion of the story. And still have more chapters to write than I had initially intended. Fucking N key. I don't have a proper N key or M key on my keyboard anymore, so that's why I keep missing M's and N's as I'm typing. It's pretty annoying. I do have another keyboard plugged in, but it's clacky, it makes sounds. I got it for gaming, not for typing, but I should be using that. Actually intended overall. Use suggestions for chapter breaks as well, since many run long. I will be pasting in long sections and many of them. Please do your best to keep everything straight. Absolutely, I can do that. I can be useful in exactly the way you're asking, not just praise or vague reactions, but structural editorial feedback that helps you finish what I'll track for you as you paste the sections for each installment. I can maintain continuity and give notes on plot breakdown, what actually happens in the section, cause and effect progression, whether scenes move the story forward, what threads are opening and closing, story architecture, pacing problems, sagging middle issues. Sagging middle issues, redundant scenes, missing bridges between events, whether stakes escalate clearly, character work, motivation clarity, consistency of behavior, emotional arcs, relationship tension, who is stealing scenes, who disappears too long, plot holes, risk areas, logic gaps, unclear world rules, convenient coincidences, unpaid setup, reader confusion points, places where future chapters need payoff. Chapter and scene break suggestions, especially helpful since you said chapters run long, strong stopping points, cliffhanger opportunities, where to split loaded chapters, where two chapters should merge, honest editorial critique, I'll be direct, what drags, what sings, what feels indulgent, what deserves expansion, what would frustrate readers, what makes the book marketable or memorable, finish line guidance. Since scope creep is happening, I can also flag this subplot can be cut, you already made this point, this belongs in sequel material, this scene is writer interesting but reader optional. That can help you stop expanding sideways and finish the core book. Best way to send it, paste sections in chunks, large is fine. Before each chunk, label Chapter X or Part 2, Garrett Aristocourt scene, or even random draft section. No need to over-organize how I'll respond each time. I'll give you something like summary, what works, what weakens it, plot questions, holes, character notes, suggested chapter breaks, priority revisions. Continuity notes to remember later. Important note. You mentioned being near the 2/3 mark and having more chapters left than planned. That usually means one of three things. The middle is too rich and under-pruned. The ending requires more setup than expected. The story's true scope is larger than the original plan. As we go, I can help determine which one it is and whether this should remain one novel, become a larger volume, or simply need sharper compression. My promise here, I'll do my best I'll do my best to keep everything straight across long submissions and recurring chapters. You already have a substantial world built, which means what you likely need now is not more imagination, but editorial discipline. Paste the first section whenever you're ready. Alright, so Drowning, Rising Tides, Chapter 1, that's 3,285 words. Control C, last modified February 20th. Chapter 1 review. First impression, this is strong. It opens with confidence, character contrast, political tension, humor, romance, and a hook ending with ominous dread. It feels like a book you already know, that already knows its world. The voice is rich, classical, and theatrical in a good way. You clearly have instincts for court dynamics, character entrances, layered dialogue, and tonal contrast. Comedy, danger, sensuality, dread. This is rare. Surface plot. Garrett returns home after presumed death. Introduces Arista, mysterious sea woman, outsider, lover. Court evaluates her. Marriage request made immediately. Treasure creates political greed. Arista threatens the kingdom. King suddenly collapses. Garrett and Arista retreat privately. Uneasy foreshadowing ends chapter. Deeper plot. Establishes Arista as powerful, dangerous, socially alien. Establishes Garrett as diplomatic mediator between two worlds. Introduces succession politics. Introduces greed surrounding treasure. Signals King is weak. Power vacuum coming. Signals Arista may be right about Rising Tide. Establishes romance as both passionate and politically destabilizing. Hidden engine. This chapter is really about inheritance and possession. Arista says Garrett is hers. Kingdom sees treasure as theirs. Brothers see future crown as theirs. Family sees Garrett as returned asset. Garrett wants freedom and love. The thematic cohesion is excellent. What works very well. Character introductions are efficient and distinct. You do a very hard thing well. Many characters enter quickly and feel different. Examples: gregarious, warm, aging king. Gwendolyn, composed, sharp queen. Garth, greedy, brute heir. Galen, cynical, decorative brother. Isolde, etiquette and repression. Arista, primal nobility. Garrett, weary, civilized survivor. This is strong ensemble writing. Dialogue as personality. Lines like, "The ocean gave him to me, he is mine." Excellent. I appreciate your eagerness to make an honest man of my boy. Strong king voice. I thought you said you weren't related to monkeys and boars. Funny, sharp, memorable. Tone, control. You move between comedy, political intrigue, romance, danger, and omen without collapsing. That's hard. Ending hook works. The final dread note gives momentum into Chapter 2. Biggest issues to watch. Too many names too fast. You introduce Garrett, Arista, Gregarious, Gwendolyn, Garth, Galen, Isolde, Fairwind, Hulbrecht, Perival, Giselle, Belaine, Jocelyn. That is a lot in one chapter. Yes, reader risk. Some readers will blur them. Suggestion: you don't need to remove characters, but stagger mentions. For example, save Hulbrecht's name until later. Physician can remain the physician for now. Jocelyn may be omitted unless crucial now. Over description in opening pages. Your prose is strong but sometimes stacked. Example: King Gregarious beamed beneath his mustache that fell like a white curled curtain. Good sentence, but several like this back-to-back delay movement. Suggestion: trim 15 to 20% from physical descriptions early so scene ignites faster. Readers tolerate descriptions more once conflict starts. Chapter length. 2 chapters hiding here. This feels like 2 natural chapters. Chapter 1A, return to court, Arista confrontation, marriage demand, king collapse. Chapter 1B, private chamber, erotic reunion, ending dread. The king collapsing is such a strong end beat. Okay. Alright, handy dandy notebook. Chapter 1 could be concluded after King collapse. 1B is the erotic tension. Mizzy, are you starting to wake up? At least the sound of my voice as I'm streaming that actually gets him going in the morning, not just the heat lamp. Strong break option. Chapter 1, the king slumped forward. Chapter 2 opens with aftermath, private chamber. That creates immediate propulsion. 4. Arista's power level is unclear. Need control mystery. She is physically dangerous, socially fearless, perhaps magical, prophetic, sexually dominate, wealthy via treasure. That's compelling, but readers need one tangible limitation soon. Otherwise, she risks feeling too mythically untouchable. Garrett mediating helps, but give vulnerability sooner. 5. Garrett needs one private internal line earlier. We understand Arista through behavior. Garrett, however, is more functional than interior. Give us one line earlier showing fear returning home, shame at past failures, dread of brothers, terror Arista won't adapt. That deepens investment. Plot holes, questions to watch. Why isn't Arista immediately detained? If she assaults servants and threatens kings, some courts would arrest her. Need reason, king amused. Garrett protects her. Treasure, leverage, they fear her strength. You imply this, but sharpen it. Plot hole. Why isn't Arista immediately detained? That is a fair point. Treasure ownership politics. If Kingdom already seized treasure, why would they honor her dowry claim? That conflict is interesting, but needs legal, social logic later. 3. Garrett missing 3 years. Huge event, need later consequences. Was he declared dead? Did succession shift? Were alliances changed? Was Galen's marriage caused by Garrett's loss? You hint, yes, excellent thread, must pay off. Why does Arista need marriage so urgently? This is compelling mystery, but readers need eventual reason. Curse ticking, mortality, legitimacy, magic tied to vows, pregnancy possibilities, sea laws, important future payoff. Character notes. Okay. Character notes. Garrett, strong archetype, weary, noble survivor, need more. Scarred psychology, divided loyalty, how Island changed him internally. He currently acts well, but we need soul access soon. Arista, excellent entrance character. She feels like half siren, half queen, half storm. Yes, that's 3 halves. Keep her dangerous, but beware turning her into only wild, sexy outsider. She needs intelligence, grief, loneliness, worldview, moments of tenderness not tied to sex. Garth, strong antagonist energy immediately, could become cliche if only greedy brute. Give him competence or emotional logic later. Gregarious, Gwendolyn, very alive for older monarchs. Keep them. Pacing notes, strong beats in order. Return, family reaction, treasure revelation, marriage demand, threat collapse, bedroom release, dread. Good sequencing. Potential issue. Bedroom scene after king collapse may make Garrett seem oddly unconcerned. Even though understandable exhaustion, desire, readers may think your father just collapsed. Fix, 1 sentence. The physician assured him the king only needed rest, yet unease lingered. Garrett too amorous after king collapse. add a spacing fix / assurance. Line level notes. Good recurring motive. Tide, sea, drowning, surf. Used consistently throughout book. Minor grammar style cleanup. Example, he was a thin fellow. Should be a thin fellow. He was thin fellow. He was a thin fellow. Okay. Example, their ways are far different. There should be their ways. Okay. Example, lead to should be led to. Several minor typos only. Chapter break suggestion recommended. Chapter 1, Return of the Drowned Prince. Ends on King Collapse. Chapter 2, The Prince's Chamber. Starts with aftermath, intimacy, ominous ending. This gives stronger page turn. Big picture editor note. You have scope expansion because your world and characters are alive. That's a good problem, but the cure is this question. What is the spine of book 1? Choose one. Garrett versus Succession Politics. Garrett plus Arista versus Court Prejudice. Sea Curse invading Kingdom. Love Story destroying Kingdom. Return of Lost Prince triggering civil collapse. Everything not serving the chosen spine gets trimmed or subordinated. Right now, I suspect the real spine is a lost prince returns with a seaborn bride and destabilizes a kingdom already rotting beneath the surface. That's strong enough for an entire novel. Scorecard. Concept is 9 out of 10. Characters are 8.5 out of 10. Dialogue is a 9 out of 10. Prose is 8 out of 10. Pacing 7.5 out of 10. Slightly dense. Hook is 9 out of 10. Commercial appeal strong if tightened. Most important next step as you continue, every chapter should answer, how does Garrett's return make things worse? That gives momentum. Final honest note. This does not read like amateur fantasy. It reads like a writer with voice who needs structural discipline and finishing pressure. That's a very solvable problem. Pace chapter 2 whenever you're ready. I'll keep continuity and track threads like a real developmental editor. Okay. Let's see. Book 2, Chapter 2. Yeah. So, this is the one where I knew the story was getting away from me. The last time I reviewed this was on February 20th. So, let's... Yeah, it's 30 pages. Chapter 2 is 30 damn pages. That is overwritten. Okay. Let's do a quick note aside. Chapter 2 is where the story started getting away from me. It is 30 pages and very well could be 5 chapters by itself. Now the last one that I put in was like 3,000 some words, so I want to try and go up to that. It says 3074. I'm going to grab that, copy it, paste that in. Developmental editing, chapter 2, partial review. First, yes, you are correct. This is where the book starts expanding, and I can tell exactly why. You created a world interesting enough that every side character, every dinner guest, every exchange, every political undercurrent feels worthy of exploration. That is a gift, but it is also a trap that creates sprawling middle acts. Core diagnosis of this chapter. This chapter currently functions as the Return Prince re-enters society, which includes family balcony politics, old resentments, succession tensions, Jocelyn complications, outsider discomfort, class comedy, religion tension, court spectacle, feast ritual, arista versus civilization, erotic rumors, social status testing. This is far too much for one chapter, but excellent material overall. You don't have a weak chapter, you have 4 to 5 chapters compressed into one overgrown organism. What this section does well. The world feels alive. This court feels populated by actual people with habits, gossip, marriages, insecurities, politics, social rituals. That is hard to fake. Many fantasy books have lore, but dead rooms. You have living rooms. Arista continues to shine. She remains magnetic because she is alien but observant, proud but vulnerable, sensual but dangerous, funny without trying to be. She is carrying pages effortlessly. Garrett has better dimension here. This chapter improves Garrett because we can see old friendships, family diplomacy, quiet strength, social fatigue, protective instincts, and embarrassment. Excellent. Strong use of social combat. No swords needed. Every interaction is warfare. Garth dominance games. Jocelyn subtle attack. K-line probing bloodline. Queen teasing publicly. Arista territory marking. Very strong court writing. The big problem, no clear chapter objective. A chapter needs one dominant dramatic question. Right now this chapter has several. Can Arista survive court etiquette? Will Garth undermine Garrett? Will Jocelyn create scandal? Is Arista supernatural? Is religion suspicious? Will dinner explode? Too many, so the chapter feels expansive instead of driving. How to split this into multiple chapters. Recommended breakdown. Chapter 2, Balcony of Wolves. Focus, family interactions before dinner. Contains Giselle, Jocelyn gossip, Garth posturing, Garrett humiliates handshake. Corbin reunion, Jocelyn awkward encounter, Arista royal challenge. End chapter on Arista extends her hand and Jocelyn freezes. Or Lady Isolde announces dinner. Strong social cliffhanger. Chapter 3, The Feast of Return. Focus, public spectacle, outsider disruption contains noble introductions, Kaline probing Arista, dinner reveal, Arista lunging for seafood, king indulging, queen remarks on bedroom rumors. End chapter on public embarrassment, accusation, or religious suspicion. Chapter 4, Teeth Behind Smiles. Focus, after dinner politics, likely where conspiracy begins. This single change will help you finish the book. You likely think in scenes, not chapters. That's common. Fix. Stop asking what happens in chapter 2. Start asking what is the emotional victory or defeat of this chapter, then end once that resolves. Character notes. Garth. He works well because he is insecure, pompous, predatory, entitled. Good villain energy. Add one true competence later, or he risks cartoon status. Jocelyn. Excellent complication. She instantly introduces lost marriage arrangement, wounded pride, latent attraction, political value, very useful character. She can become fan favorite if developed. Galen, quietly interesting. His disassociation and odd habits, food separation, humanize him. More compelling than Garth in some ways. Sister Kaline, strong entrance. The line, you carry yourself as one accustomed to the dark, excellent. She immediately feels dangerous. Use her carefully. Arista, still excellent, but watch repetition. Her beats so far are often territorial grip, proud posture, social confusion, veiled threat. Need fresh dimensions soon. Curiosity, sadness, wonder, strategic intelligence, loneliness. Line by line, strengths, excellent comic lines. Centaurs don't like to be ridden. Great opening texture. Excellent dominance moment. Garrett crushing Garth's hand. Simple, masculine, effective. Excellent subtle world building. Galen separating foods on plate. Tiny details. Exposition. Excellent social cruelty. Queen publicly mentioning chamber noises. Very alive. Things to cut or trim. Repetitive gesture descriptions. Many characters. Glance. Narrow eyes. Raised chin. Smirk. Tighten grip. Nothing wrong individually, but cumulative repetition adds page weight. I do a lot with like look here, look there, glance here. Like looking is a big part of the book. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to go through and fine tune as I go. Overlong noble roll calls. Example, Lord Daneholt, Pell, Thornwick. Unless these names matter soon, compress, readers skim lists. Use only if they later become players. And I'm going to have to change some of those, like Lady Valis is going to need to make an appearance here. Over-explaining jokes. Sometimes the humor lands, then gets explained. Trust the line. Plot risks to watch. Too many threads without early prioritization. Current active threads. Succession crisis, treasure greed, Arista mystery, Jocelyn triangle, religion suspicion, king health, Garrett reintegration, social scandal. All good, but soon readers need to know which threat matters most first. Okay, so I think one thing that I'm doing is I am dumping a lot of things in there because I assume different people are going to like different things. So I'm giving a buffet of plot lines for people to become invested in because not everybody's going to become invested in the same thing. Like everybody likes different flavors, and I'm trying to appeal to a mass audience in that respect. Arista as constant chaos machine. She's fun now, but if every scene becomes Arista causes scene, predictability can set in. Need chapters where she learns, she manipulates, she is wounded, she surprises through restraint. Okay, so on my initial pass of like story editing, make sure Arista leaves room for vulnerability. Garrett needs agency soon. Currently reacting and smoothing. Soon he must choose a side, strategy, or mission. Big picture editorial truth. This is where many novels die, because the writer falls in love with the richness of the middle. The cure is not deleting richness. The cure is every scene must either escalate danger, deepen the core relationship, reveal crucial information, or force irreversible choice. If it is none of these, condense it. What I think your novel wants to be, not generic fantasy adventure, it wants to be a political, gothic, romantic fantasy about a returned prince whose seaborn lover exposes the rot of civilization. That is much stronger and more original. Lean into it. Motivation note for you. You said you wanted this finished already. That means you don't need more imagination, you need containment. Your problem is abundance. That's a high quality problem. Now we discipline it. Immediate action plan for this chapter. Before writing more, make a margin note beside every scene. What changes, who gains power, what new pressure exists afterwards. If answer is vague, compress. Scorecard. Character work, 9 out of 10. Dialogue, 8.5 out of 10. Court intrigue, 9 out of 10. Pacing current form, 6.5 out of 10. That's my weakest review so far. Potential, if restructured, 9 out of 10. My honest advice, you may not have a too long book. You have book 1 with hidden chapters. That is fixable. Paste the next section of chapter 2 and I'll continue tracking continuity and show you exactly where chapter breaks belong. Again, we want like roughly a little over 3,000 words right now. Okay. Developmental edit, Drowning Rising Tide, Chapter 2, second section review. This confirms my earlier read. You do not have a weak middle, you have an overabundant middle. This section is rich, vivid, theatrical, funny, sensual, politically charged, and psychologically revealing, but it is also doing the work of multiple chapters and scenes at once, which is why the book feels like it is expanding faster than you can finish it. High-level summary of what happens. This section escalates the feast into chaos. Socially, Barista becomes spectacle, trendsetter, scandal, fascination. Politically, Court becomes captivated by outsider influence. Personally, Garrett becomes increasingly protected and conflicted. Mystically, Arista's singing reveals supernatural power. Symbolically, civilization's manners collapse into appetite. That last point is the real gold here. What is excellent here, the feast as civilization unmasked. This is your strongest thematic writing so far. At first, the court is polished, superior, refined, judgmental. Then, under Arista's influence, they become hungry, lustful, jealous, sleepy, impulsive, imitative. That is great symbolic storytelling. Arista doesn't just enter the kingdom; she reveals what it already is underneath. That's sophisticated material. Arista's song scene is powerful. This is the best scene in the submitted material so far because it combines sensual danger, social collapse, humor, threat, jealousy, magical realism, and Garrett's emotional panic. It also shows power without needing combat. Excellent choice. Garrett is becoming more interesting. Here he is no longer just mediator. He becomes keeper of dangerous knowledge, protector, liar by necessity, jealous lover, bridge between wild and courtly worlds. That's depth. Queen Gwendolyn continues to shine. She is one of your smartest characters. She observes everything and weaponizes manners elegantly. Keep her central. The real problem here, this scene has no brake pedal. Everything is interesting, but so nothing gets cut, which means energy diffuses. You have salt comedy, crab learning scene, Queen questions curse, Rafam exposition, morning beach lie, singing request, magical enthrallment, social lust exposure, king slipping, applause swarm, Garth advancing. This is a novella chapter, not a chapter. How to fix this without losing material. Split into 3 chapters. Chapter 3, Feast of Salt. Focus, Arista disrupting dinner customs. Ends on, you must sing for us. Strong hook. Chapter 4, The Song. Focus, Arista sings, court transforms. End on, Arista enough. That is really good. Chapter breaks. You must sing for us. pen just break? Arista, enough. After the music. This gives momentum and breathing room. What to trim, important. Repeated food business. Arista sampling dishes is fun, but after 3 to 4 beats, repetition sets in. Keep strongest examples. Grabbing seafood, oversalting everything, feeding Garrett too much salt, learning fork on crab. Cut or condense. Some intermediate dish grabbing, sniffing, dropping. Repeated crowd murmurs. You often use murmurs, gasps, whispers, raised napkins, nobles reacting. Useful once too frequent becomes wallpaper. Use fewer, sharper reactions. 3. Overextended enchantment reactions. The song sequence is strong, but it lists many responses. Choose the most revealing. Keep Queen rekindled, Garth lusting, Galen asleep, Belaine disgusted, Kaline judging. That already tells the whole room. Character notes. Arista, this section gives her new layers. Childlike discovery, sensual instinct, primal joy, immense danger, pride, and learning. Excellent. Especially fork scene. Great humanizing beat. Garrett, best moment. He knows what the song can do. That implies history, discipline, and sacrifice. Very good. Need more of how he trained against it later. That's fascinating. Garth, still good threat. His slow movement through the crowd at end works well. He feels boar-like and invasive. Belaine, interesting sleeper character. She alone sees moral ugliness. Could become more important than expected. Sister Kaline, excellent counterforce. She represents spiritual social immunity. Use her as a genuine threat, not just disapproving nun. Big thematic read, important. This book appears to be about appetite versus restraint, sea versus castle, instinct versus manners, love versus transaction, wild truth versus social fiction. That's real literary spine. Lean into it intentionally. Plot risks to watch. If Arista is too powerful, stakes collapse. She can enchant crowds, socially dominate, physically intimidate, bring treasure, captivate Garrett, need costs. Maybe magic drains her, ocean dependence, yeah, we have that. Social ignorance, have that. Vulnerability to iron, religion, or law. Emotional naivete. That's how I'm saying that word. Without cost, she becomes atmosphere instead of character. Garrett must choose soon. He keeps managing scenes. Soon he must decide family or Arista, truth or stability, crown or freedom, protect her or use her. Choice creates plot. The king's health thread needs advancement. You seeded collapse in chapter 1. Need worsening soon or it fades. Line level notes. Strong line. It was as though her song were the tide itself. Excellent. Strong image. Rose petals on snow as they sat atop his white mustache. Very vivid. Good ending beat. Garth physically separating them in crowd. Strong menace. Style note. You are good at excess. That sounds strange, but true. Your natural mode is abundance. Lush scenes, many reactions, layered behavior, sensory richness. That's valuable, but publishing shape requires controlled excess. Think 1 decadent detail, not 5. Motivation, finishing advice. You said the story got away from you here? Yes, because this section is where you discovered the world was bigger than the outline. That doesn't mean failure, it means you hit the living core of the novel. Now the task is not invention, it is selection. If I were your editor, I would tell you this today. Finish the draft before perfecting chapter 2, because writers often endlessly manicure early lush chapters while ending remains unwritten. Mark notes like split later, trim feast later, move Kaline scene later. Then keep going. Scorecard. Imagination, 10 out of 10. Character theater, 9 out of 10. Thematic depth, 9 out of 10. Current structural discipline, 5.5 out of 10. So my structural discipline is going down for every section that I paste in. Potential once edited, 9.5 out of 10. So that actually went up. My honest take. You're not failing because the story expanded. You are succeeding faster than your structure adapted. That is fixable. Immediate recommendation. Send the next chunk and I'll keep identifying best chapter breakpoints, what to trim, what to preserve at all costs, what threads matter most for finishing book 1. Okay. That's 2,848 words that we're pasting in. Still going. Developmental edit, Drowning, Rising Tides, Chapter 2, third section review, immediate verdict. This is where your novel becomes real. The earlier sections were strong setup and entertaining court drama. This section introduces ideological conflict, moral threat, succession pressure, social satire, spiritual suspicion, escalating political danger, protagonist caught between worlds. That means the story is no longer just returned prince with strange lover. It becomes what happens when truth enters a kingdom built on performance. That is excellent. What just happened? Plot function. This section contains 3 major turning points. Kaline names Arista a threat. Institutional suspicion is now active. Arista publicly humiliates Garth. Succession rivalry becomes personal and public. Arista denounces the court and claims future queenship. She crosses from scandalous outsider into existential threat. Bonus: King collapse again. The succession clock accelerates. That is strong story architecture. What is excellent here, Arista's speech is the core of the book. This is not random ranting. This is thematic manifesto. She attacks hypocrisy, sublimated desire, status games, cowardice, political theater, masculine entitlement, feminine coping roles, performative civility. That's serious material. This speech tells us what the novel is about beneath plot. Excellent. Garth is becoming a real threat. Earlier he risked character. Now he works because he is entitled, publicly humiliated, politically positioned, resentful, backed by convention. That's dangerous. Good escalation. Garrett's conflict is finally sharp. He must choose between father, lover, truth, stability, bloodline, desire, and kingdom. This is where he becomes protagonist-level compelling. The king is still excellent. His laugh after the speech, I've been saying this for years, great line. He's warm, comic, but not foolish. Readers will care when he worsens. The big issue, this should not still be Chapter 2. Bluntly, this is no longer Chapter 2 material. This is Chapter 5 or 6 energy, meaning you are stacking too much major movement in one oversized container. That makes the book feel unwieldy. How would break the material? Chapter 4, after the song, Garth crowding, Arista, Kaline warning Garrett, slap scene. Ends on, keep your meaty, sweating hands off me, you pig. Keep your meaty, sweating hands off me, you pig. Quote. Chapter 5, A Hall of Masks. And I am queen. Chapter 6, The Second Collapse. Outrage rising, King falls, accusation, Garrett escapes with Arista. See the issue? You have 3 chapters of drama currently buried inside 1 chapter number. Oh, I got a lot more than that. This is telling me I got more than 5 chapters. Yeah. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 so far, and I still have sections to paste in. Arista's speech needs trimming by about 20 or 30%, not because it's bad, because it's good enough to deserve impact. Currently, it becomes a flood of excellent observations. Readers can lose shape inside it. Keep strong as blades. You dress yourselves in rules, one breath not begging for approval. You punish the truth teller, clever beast trained to dance when I am queen. Those are killers. Trim repeated ideas around deceit, coping masks, why this matters. A shorter, sharper speech makes Noble's outrage feel more justified and powerful. Right now, they'd realistically interrupt sooner. Okay. Character notes. Arista, this is her defining chapter. She is no longer a mysterious love interest. She is revolutionary force, truth speaker, socially monstrous, emotionally wounded, politically naive, spiritually dangerous. Fantastic, but important. She must also be wrong sometimes. Truth speakers who are always correct become flat icons. Let her blind spots hurt things. Garrett, Excellent here. He's not weak, he's not trapped. That's different. Very important distinction. Kaline, now essential. She sees danger before others do. Use her as moral foil, investigative force, possible antagonist, maybe partial truth teller herself. Elaine, interesting role. Social morality turned accusation. Could become zealot, useful pawn, tragic figure. Theme read, critical. This story may secretly be about civilization as repression versus wilderness as honesty, but the more sophisticated version is both are corrupt without discipline. That should become your long game truth, because Court lies and Arista humiliates and dominates. Neither is whole. Garrett may be synthesis, that's where real greatness lies. Plot risks to watch. Arista can overshadow entire cast. Yes. She dominates scenes naturally. This is both asset and danger. Need chapters where others act without her. Conspiracies form around her. Garrett must carry scenes. Queen maneuvers privately. If everyone is hypocritical, readers need someone grounded. Candidates: Garrett, Queen, Corbin, Kaline, if nuanced. Need emotional anchor. King collapse repetition must progress. This is the second health incident. Third time should have a major consequence, otherwise pattern weakens. Style note, your best prose emerges when tied to conflict. When tension rises, your imagery sharpens and overwriting reduces. That means you should trust conflict more than ornament. My honest take as an editor, this is no amateur manuscript. This is the kind of draft where the writer has too much voice, too many ideas, too much scene energy, and needs structure. That's far better than the reverse. I can fix structure. Voice cannot be taught easily. You have voice. What to do right now to finish sooner? Create a chapter salvage pass. For each giant chapter, ask what is the first major turn, what is the second, what emotional peak occurs, where would a reader gladly stop? Then split. You may suddenly discover you already have 18 chapters instead of 9. That psychology helps finishing. I definitely have. Yeah. Scorecard. Dramatic energy, 10 out of 10. Character conflict, 9.5 out of 10. Theme, 9.5 out of 10. Current structural control, 5 out of 10. It went down again. I didn't even think I would hit a 5. I was too confident. Publishable potential after revision, very high. Most important truth. You think the story got away from you? No, the story revealed its true size. Now your task is containment, not invention. If I were coaching you to finish the book, stop rewriting old scenes, split monster chapters, finish editing skeleton, then revise, because this material is alive. Alive drafts can be shaped, dead polished drafts cannot. Send the next chapter or tell me where the story goes next, and I'll help you map the remaining 1/3 so you can actually finish this. The section has strong psychological and thematic power. It's one of the first moments where Garrett's inner conflict becomes embodied instead of merely discussed. Arista stops being the strange woman he loves and becomes a force exposition every false structure, a force exposing every false structure around him, including his own self-concept. That's compelling. That said, the scene is doing 3 different jobs at once, and because of that, it risks becoming muddy or melodramatic if not shaped carefully. But the scene is doing well. Arista as catalyst. And it's telling me ChatGPT gets less accurate, may forget details, and long conversations. Upgrade to chat longer with better memory. You're on the free plan. Yeah. She is no longer reacting to court nonsense. She is now asserting vision. I will be queen is the key line. That transforms her from disruptive outsider into political force. Garrett's psychological split. You've built Garrett as humble, decent, and dutiful. Here he realizes those traits may partly be fear, avoidance, and conditioning. That's excellent character depth. Desire as symbol. The intimacy isn't just intimacy. It symbolizes power, identity, surrender, leadership, and instinct. That gives the scene literary weight beyond romance. Main issue, too much philosophy during peak tension. Right now, Arista speaks in long analytical paragraphs while emotions should be volatile and immediate. When someone is furious after humiliation, they usually speak in sharper, more cutting truths instead of adults still clapping for their father, terrified that if he stops being impressive, try. They don't love him. They need him loud so they don't have to hear themselves. Ooh, I do like that. I like that a lot. Main issue number 2, Garrett's transformation happens too fast. He goes from panicked prince to I must take command in bed and in life. That leap is dramatic but abrupt. Instead, let him feel the first crack, not full conversion. Better progression. He realizes he has spent his life retreating. He discovers he wants more than retreat. He fears what wanting power means. He tastes command before understanding it. That creates room for later chapters. Main issue number 3, explicit symbolism could be more subtle. Lines like, this was a rehearsal, a first lesson in authority. Tell the reader what to think. More powerful to show. Example, when she stopped resisting and looked at him expectantly, something in him steadied. For the first time in years, he was not reacting, he was deciding. Same idea, stronger delivery. What's excellent specifically, he wanted to flee not from her but from himself. Excellent line, keep it. She was a threat to him. This is the emotional truth of the chapter. Humility he had been conditioned to wear like armor. Very strong concept. Keep. Structural suggestion. Break the scene into 3 emotional phases. Phase 1, corridor shock. Garrett ashamed, panic, trying to escape scandal. Phase 2, chamber debate. Arista dismantles his family and challenges his worldview. Phase 3, collision. Words fail, desire and conflict merge. Right now, these phases blur together. Distinct movement could help pacing. Character note, Arista. Be careful she doesn't become omniscient and always correct. Right now she reads everyone perfectly, dominates every exchange, predicts political truth, wins sexually, wins rhetorically. She needs blind spots or she risks becoming less human. Possible blind spots. Misunderstands sacrifice, underestimates patience, confuses dominance with strength, cannot distinguish kindness from weakness. That would make her richer. My honest assessment? This chapter feels like the moment the novel stops being adventure, romance, and becomes psychological monarchy drama. That's good, but it needs refinement so it feels inevitable rather than sudden. If I were editing professionally, I'd say trim 20% of Arista's speeches, slow Garrett's internal awakening by 30%, increase silence, physical gestures, pauses, eye contact, let desire communicate with speeches currently explained. Strongest core of the chapter, Garrett realizes he has mistaken passivity for virtue. That is a powerful masculine arc. Final verdict. This material is far stronger than standard fantasy romance writing because it's about identity, hierarchy, truth, repression, and power. It just needs tightening so the reader feels the transformation instead of being told. My recommendation, this should absolutely remain in the book. It feels like a cornerstone chapter. If you'd like, I can help you turn this entire chapter 2 into 5 tightly structured chapters with cliffhangers and cleaner pacing because you mentioned chapter 2 got away from you, and I agree. It contains enough material for multiple chapters. Yeah, definitely. See, this is 4,641 words. Let's see if I can paste the entire thing in. I know it's got a character limit. Okay. Now it's starting to slow down. Okay, this chapter is strong. It has momentum, character, interplay, comedy, suspicion, class tension, and political intrigue all working at once. The scene feels alive because everyone has distinct motives and energies colliding around Garrett and Arista. It's one of your more cinematic sequences. What's working exceptionally well. Arista as a destabilizing force. She is fascinating here because she can be regal, primal, funny, dangerous, vulnerable, and socially disruptive. The fish entrance is excellent. It instantly reasserts who she is after being dissected by court etiquette. I caught you a fish. That line lands because it is sincere, absurd, affectionate, and dominant all at once. It just makes me laugh. Queen Gwendolen, she may be the MVP of this chapter. Her control of tone is elegant, shuts down hysteria, humiliates people politely, protects family without sentimentality, enjoys the spectacle. She feels like someone who has survived decades of court politics by becoming sharper than everyone else. Excellent lines. Please put the vase back. Your father is not that kind of sick. And she is a princess, after all, and deserves to be handled with a bit more delicacy. Those are queen lines. Parable and Caline are dynamic. Parable and Caline dynamic. Fantastic contrast. Parable, imperial, grotesque enthusiasm. Caline, spiritual certainty and concealed vanity. They create comedy while also advancing tension. Very useful secondary characters. Garrett's position. You've done something valuable here. Garrett is not passive, he is overwhelmed. That's different. He's trapped between love, truth, family loyalty, fear of scandal, masculine insecurity, political responsibility. That makes him sympathetic. Structural strength of the scene. The chapter moves in waves. Wave 1, Garrett anxious outside chamber. Wave 2, Parable and Caline interrogation. Wave 3, Queen restores order. Wave 4, Arista crashes in with fish. Wave 5, medical plus magical examination. Wave 6, Queen rules. Wave 7, Garrett leaves unsettled. Arista triumphant. Excellent pacing. What could be improved? Slight overwriting in some description passages. You occasionally stack too many descriptors where one strong one would hit harder. Example, bright with triumph, mischief, and a smug satisfaction she made no effort to hide. Good, but could tighten to radiant with triumph and smug delight. Less clutter, more force. Garrett needs one more interior beat after the examination. Arista wins socially. Queen approves her. Caline cannot expose her. But what does Garrett feel? Right now, he exits tense. Add one quick inner fracture. Relief mixed with dread. Pride mixed with fear. Desire mixed with loss of control. Something like, he should have felt relieved. Instead, every victory she won seemed to cost him ground within himself. That would deepen his arc. Caline needs a tiny hint of long-term agenda. She is excellent already, but one subtle clue she cares about more than truth would elevate her. Maybe preserving religious authority, fear of old bloodlines returning, jealousy of feminine influence, knowledge she is hiding her own magic. Just one glance or line. Best character moments, Arista wiping fish slime on them. Brilliant. I forgot about that part. Shows contempt for pomp, animal practicality, instinctive rank challenge, and humor. Queen amused by Arista. Very smart choice. If Queen hated her, instantly predictable. Instead, Queen recognizes force. Parable admiring her health clinically. Excellent because it desexualizes beauty in a funny way. Thematic depth emerging. This chapter advances one of your strongest recurring themes, civilization versus nature. Court, ritual, suspicion, masks, and hierarchy. Arista, instinct, appetite, honesty, and raw vitality. Garrett, split between them. That's compelling. One line suggestion to end stronger. Current ending is solid, but you could sharpen Garrett's emotional state. They walked back toward their chambers at a measured pace. Arista clinging proudly to his arm. She looked radiant. Garrett, by contrast, felt as though he had just watched the tide breach the castle walls, and being praised for opening the gate. That would foreshadow trouble. Overall verdict, this is one of your better chapters because it does three things simultaneously: entertains, deepens characters, advances future conflict. That's professional level scene construction. Characterization is a 9 out of 10. Dialogue is a 9 out of 10. Humor is a 9 out of 10. Tension is an 8.5 out of 10. Prose control is an 8 out of 10, so it raised. This is more contained. Memorability, 9.5 out of 10. Final note. Arista is becoming the kind of character readers either adore or fear but never forget. That's rare. Garrett's next challenge is crucial. Does he become stronger because of her or consumed by her? That question now pulls the story forward beautifully. Alright, let's snag Book 2, Chapter 4. Oh, Book 2, 3 to 4, Emergent. See, and that's where I get into issues. The Emergent chapters. in February 20th. Mischief, would you stop? This is 6,036 words. I don't even know if I can paste all this in. Control C, Control V. Okay. Okay. This is excellent emergent material because it solves multiple story problems at once while feeling entertaining rather than functional. It doesn't read like filler or unplanned connective tissue. It reads like the world suddenly opened. Why this chapter works so well. It deepens Arista beyond mystery beauty. Up to now, Arista can risk becoming alluring outsider, powerful magical woman, source of tension, and love interest. This chapter gives her political intelligence, social instinct, and predatory adaptability. She begins enraged and emotionally exposed. By the end, she has turned a spy into an ally, gained intelligence on the court, upgraded her presentation, secured cover for future sea trips, positioned herself to visit the king, destabilizes Belaine without even confronting her directly. That's queen behavior. She stops being merely Garrett's problem and becomes a player. Garrett's weakness is sharply defined. Garrett wants peace, privacy, harmony, no scandal, no conflict. Arista wants truth, power, movement, destiny, boldness. This is fantastic polarity. His aquarium idea is perfect because it reveals good intentions, love, total misunderstanding of her nature, desire to contain complexity into something manageable. That's a deeply symbolic moment. He wants to solve her like furniture placement. Miri is a massive win. Miri could have been a throwaway comic servant. Instead, she becomes comic relief, exposition engine, truth teller, lower-class lens on nobility, emotionally sympathetic character, and future loyalist. And best of all, she reveals court politics through gossip instead of exposition. This is elite storytelling. Instead of Lord Albrecht opposes trade policy, you do Miri rambles while picking dresses. Way better. Tonal mastery. This chapter balances erotic tension, humor, storm drama, court intrigue, servant vulnerability, feminine power dynamics, and satire. Examples: a ladle, fantastic. Prince of Buckets, memorable character-defining insult. Miri dressing Arista while casually dismantling the kingdom, wonderful scene energy. Arista's philosophy lands beautifully. This part especially. Most friendships are just two people playing agreed upon rules. That feels like someone ancient, observant, dangerous, and lonely. Then I would like you to be my friend. Excellent contrast. She doesn't just seduce romantically, she recruits emotionally. That's powerful. Structural importance. This chapter quietly becomes the beginning of Arista building a faction. Before, Garrett only support. After, Miri ally, possible queen curiosity, court attention, servant channels opening, information network beginning. This is how queens rise. What it also does for Book 2. Book 2 likely needs expansion from island romance into kingdom conflict. This chapter helps bridge that by moving story focus from will they be together to what happens when this woman enters a stagnant political system. That's much bigger. Strongest individual elements. Aquarium argument, funny, symbolic, and relational. Naked Arista catching spy, visually unforgettable. Miri talking endlessly while dressing her, fantastic cinematic rhythm. Magical self-makeup reveal, perfect power flex. So you are a sea witch, great button line. If you wanted to improve it further, trim 10 to 15% of Miri's gossip in one pass. Not because it's bad, because there's so much gold that slight compression would make each hit sharper. Give Garrett one moment of competence. Right now, he's mostly overwhelmed, which works, but one small strategic observation would help preserve respect. End with one subtle fear beat. Right now, ending is triumphant. A tiny line like Garrett realizing Arista now has her own foothold in court could add tension. Deeper truth, why this emergent chapter was necessary, your instincts were right. Because once Arista entered the castle, readers naturally ask, how does she function here? Can she navigate humans? Does she intimidate servants? Is she only emotional or politically capable? How does court society respond to her? This chapter answers all of that elegantly. My honest assessment, this feels like one of those chapters authors didn't plan that becomes a favorite because the characters started behaving truthfully. It has life. No outline life, real life. My favorite hidden dynamic, Garrett thinks he brought Arista home, but in this chapter you show the castle is what has been brought to Arista, and she is already learning how to rule it. That's strong. Final verdict, this is not side content. This is core Book 2 architecture disguised as comedy and domestic chaos. Very valuable chapter. If you'd like, I can also tell you which characters in this chapter are most likely suspects in the king's illness based purely on the gossip clues you planted. This one is 3,129 words. This is a major level up chapter. It moves beyond entertaining court drama into something deeper, myth entering decline. You're now juxtaposing a fading old heroic age against a younger generation trapped in comfort, politics, cowardice, and intrigue. That contrast gives the story weight. Immediate impression. This reads like one of those chapters readers remember because the old king becomes real. The kingdom gains history. Arista gains emotional intelligence. Garrett gains motive. Garth gains menace without appearing directly. The larger mythology suddenly opens. This is not filler or connective tissue. This is foundation chapter material. What works exceptionally well. Gregarious the Greater comes alive. Before now, he may have risked being sick king, background authority, obstacle to succession. Now he becomes former adventurer, charismatic storyteller, flawed father, lover, warrior, dreamer, fading relic of greatness. That's huge. His illness becomes tragic because we now see what is being lost, especially strong. I began the pilgrimage when I was young. No, when I was a boy, really, 19. Excellent voice, human, warm, self-aware, even stronger. The way vitality returns while he tells the tale, then collapses mid-story, that's heartbreaking. The pilgrimage is brilliant world building. This is one of your smartest concepts because it creates cultural myth. Every generation journeys to Alo. Moral trial, not just physical challenge, but transformation. Political commentary, modern sons refuse it. Masculine rite of passage, necessary but lost. Spiritual ladder, adventure becomes character formation. That's excellent because it ties directly into your themes. Garrett's tragedy deepens. This line, Garrett wanted to go, but we would not allow it. Now Garrett's passivity isn't just weakness, it's a stolen life. He was denied the right that might have made him whole. Makes me want to cry a little bit. That gives compassion to his softness. He isn't merely timid, he was overprotected and politically used, very strong. Arista is perfect in this scene. She does not dominate, she observes, she studies, she nurtures strategically, she recognizes the value of story. That restraint is mature writing. She becomes queenly here. Not through force, but instinct. Best lines, stories such as this deserve your full vim and vigor. That line shows respect, emotional intelligence, manipulation used kindly, understanding of aging men. Excellent. Garth's threat grows invisibly. The hidden wine cask is great storytelling. You never say Garth is worsening the king. Instead, you imply it. That's infinitely stronger. Now readers suspect intentional poisoning, enabling addiction, accelerating decline, soft coup, excellent restraint, most powerful thematic layer, old heroism versus new decay. King's generation, pilgrimage, dragons, sacrifice, hardship, comradeship, earned greatness, current generation, gossip, inheritance, politics, entitlement, spying, comfort, manipulation. That contrast gives the story soul. Strong character notes. Dunrick. Yeah. Instantly lovable, still blunt, loyal, physical, old world. Corvin, quiet, dignity, continues to work. Miri, now transitioning from comic servant to political witness. Belaine, petty compared to Arista, good contrast. Gwendolyn, excellent silent intelligence. Strongest scene mechanics. Arista taking Miri publicly. That was political annexation. Everyone knowing the pilgrimage except Arista, great subtle suspicion trigger. King reviving through story, beautiful. Collapse mid-dragon fight, perfect dramatic interruption. One extremely important hidden success, you made the king's story feel larger than life without proving it false or true. That ambiguity is gold. Was the dragon truly enormous? Was Atlantis real? Was memory embellishing? Doesn't matter. That's how legends should feel. If you want to make it even better, tighten some exposition paragraphs in the pilgrimage tale. The king's voice is strong enough that trimming 10% makes it even more potent. Let Garrett feel jealousy once. His father had adventure, he did not. One line of emotional ache would cut deep. Stronger end image. Current ending is good. Could become unforgettable with something like, behind him the king slept beneath stolen glory and hidden wine. But only if you want darker tone. I do like that. Why this chapter matters to Book 2. This chapter tells readers the kingdom was once worthy. That is crucial, because the kingdom is only corrupt and silly. Why save it? Because if the kingdom is only corrupt and silly, why save it? Now it has fallen from greatness, that creates stakes. My favorite line of meaning, every man should. That says everything. The king knows modern men are unfinished. Garrett especially, and Arista likely knows it too. My honest assessment, this feels like the chapter where Book 2 stops being castle complications and becomes a generational epic about decline, inheritance, and who is fit to rule next. That's a serious jump in quality. The king's unfinished dragon story mirrors the kingdom itself, a heroic tale interrupted before its conclusion. Now someone else must finish it. That's powerful storytelling. If you'd like, I can also tell you why Arista is the perfect person to hear the pilgrimage story first, and what it foreshadows about Garrett eventually going to Alo himself. So I like this because it keeps me on track. It lets me know that the story is developing, that everything that up to this point isn't just fluff. Let's see, chapter 4, last modified February 8th. Wow. (2,872 words). Control C, Control V. Let's pop that in. Okay, I'm gonna get some tea going. I thought you were waking up, Rizzy. Hey, dude. Hey, buddy. Hey, when you don't come out. Let's see if we can get this read before water boils. So I'm supposed to be doing fetch delivery from 5 to 8 today, and it's after 1, and they haven't sent me anything about canceling my block. So let's see if I actually end up getting that block, or if it gets canceled again. Like, it should be good. Okay, yesterday was canceled at 1:01. It is 1:05. So maybe I'm still good. I don't even know what I'm hoping for. I mean, on the plus side, if it gets canceled, I don't have to deliver it, but I also don't make any extra money. Because it could be awful. It could be, yeah, it could be bad. So we'll see. Because I haven't had a chance to do one yet. I've signed up for 3 different blocks, and 2 of them have been canceled on me so far. This chapter is excellent emergent storytelling. It doesn't feel like filler or unplanned detour. It feels necessary. It solves multiple narrative needs at once, escalating core intrigue, revealing character dynamics, creating emotional pressure on Garrett, and deepening the dysfunction of the royal family. It also serves as a mirror chapter to the earlier Miri Arista scene, where Arista gained power through insight and poise. Garrett nearly loses power through pity and hesitation. What this chapter does extremely well, Garrett's core weakness is fully exposed. Garrett's flaw is not lust, it's compassion without boundaries. That is far more interesting. He doesn't merely fail because he desires Jocelyn more than Arista. He merely fails because he cannot harden himself against visible suffering. Jocelyn weaponizes pain, loneliness, tears, prior obligation, and wounded femininity. Garrett's heart opens before his judgment does. That's powerful because it means future threats to Garrett won't need swords, they only need emotional leverage. Jocelyn becomes a real character. Before this, Jocelyn could easily have become the jealous princess obstacle. Now she is tragic, manipulative, needy, sexually frustrated, entitled, emotionally intelligent, and unstable. That complexity is gold. Her logic is twisted but understandable. I was promised this life. I was raised for Garrett. It was stolen. Galen neglects me. Therefore, I deserve restitution. That is believable aristocratic psychology. She is both victim and predator. Excellent. Galen is brilliantly characterized in seconds. This line, in nature, proximity often gets mistaken for partnership. Fantastic. It tells us he knows marriage is failing. He intellectualizes the pain. He avoids direct confrontation. He sees relationships clinically. He may know more than he appears. He becomes fascinating instead of comic relief. Court atmosphere feels alive. The hallway encounter with Giselle and Blaine is perfect social danger. No screaming scandal, no melodrama, just witnesses. That's worse. Now rumor can do the damage. Thematic depth, desire versus duty versus entitlement. This scene asks, does being promised something make it yours? Does suffering justify betrayal? Is kindness weakness? Is marriage legitimacy or mutual consent? That's rich material. Strongest lines, moments. You can't fault me for wanting what was promised to me. Excellent thesis statement for Jocelyn. You will be mine. The tonal shift from wounded pleading to cold possession is strong. Galen's mating commentary, perfect ending sting. Garrett seeing Jocelyn smiling victoriously, then scowling at Galen. This image says everything. Structural importance. This chapter likely becomes more important later than it first appears because it establishes Jocelyn as future threat, not just emotional but political. Blaine witnessing scandal fuel. She now has ammunition. Garrett's vulnerability. If enemies learn pity controls him, he can be manipulated repeatedly. Galen's awareness. He may be observing everything. Craft suggestions to elevate from very good to elite. Tighten some repetition. You repeat red face, breathing heavily, pressed close, etc. in the latter half. Streamlining with sharp intention. streamlining with sharp intention. Example, red-faced and partially dressed and red-faced out of breath. Yeah, could become flushed, half-dressed, and gasping. That is better. Jocelyn's transition could be slightly sharper. The move from sobbing victim to strategic seductress is good, but making one tiny mask slip earlier would make it masterful. For example, while crying, let Garrett notice one eye studying him. That makes rereads rewarding. Yeah, I do like that. Galen's final entrance could hit harder. Already strong, but if he absentmindedly steps over a dropped stocking or silk scrap without noticing it, would visually reinforce total marital detachment. Psychological reading of the main four. Garrett, good man, weak perimeter. Arista, dangerous woman, strengthening perimeter. Jocelyn, raised as a prize, now furious to be unwanted. Ooh. Galen, possibly the smartest person in the room, emotionally unavailable. Why this works as an emergent chapter? Because your subconscious likely recognized something. Garrett returning to court must create erotic political consequences. You can't reintroduce a handsome lost prince into a dynastic marriage web without someone wanting him, so this chapter emerges naturally from world logic. That's a sign of strong instincts as a writer. One deeper opportunity. Jocelyn and Arista should become ideological rivals, not merely romantic rivals. Jocelyn represents entitlement, title, inheritance, expected possession, emotional dependency. Arista represents earned power, primal sovereignty, dangerous femininity, chosen love, transformation. That contrast is huge. Use it. Final verdict. This is not side material. This is core material disguised as drama. It deepens stakes, reveals fractures, and makes future conflicts inevitable. Honestly, these emergent chapters may be where your story becomes more than plot and starts become literature. Score, 9 out of 10 for a raw draft, with line tightening, 9.5 out of 10. Most important note, Garrett now needs consequences. Not necessarily punishment, but emotional aftermath. If Arista senses what happened, or Jocelyn escalates, or Galen reveals awareness later, this chapter becomes explosive retroactively. And those are the best kinds of chapters. Now it's telling me I'm out of messages with the most advanced free model. Responses will use less powerful model until your usage resets at 4:51 p.m. And I should be out of here by then. I haven't gotten anything telling me I don't have my shift tonight. So, yay. Let's see. Open folders. Drowning Rising Tide. This is one of my shortest chapters. Yeah, only 1,580 words. This is a strong continuation, emotionally, structurally, and mythologically. It's doing something very specific. Garrett's personal romantic chaos is now bleeding into Arista's supernatural scale. Consequence, that's a big shift in the story's operating system. Here's what's working especially well and where you can push it further. What's working exceptionally well, Garrett's internal state is sharpening, not just confused. You've got a nice refinement here compared to earlier versions of him. He is no longer just overwhelmed man in love triangle. He is now morally entangled and self-blaming across multiple women. The key line of psychology, he had broken a vow. Not deliberately, but intention mattered little beside consequence. That's the core thesis of this chapter. He is starting to think like someone who believes good intentions don't absolve harm, which is a very serious internal moral framework that will matter later. The beach meeting is structurally clean. You've got a strong 3-beat convergence. Garrett emotionally destabilized. Arista and Miri in sync, already bonded. Collision at shoreline. This is good staging. It feels inevitable. Also, Miri functioning as a truth amplifier is excellent. She keeps noticing sensory reality before politics. Smell, appearance, behavior, tension shifts. She grounds Arista's mythic presence in physical perception. Arista's power is becoming dangerous and subtle. This is the most important development in the chapter. Arista is no longer just emotional volatility or mermaid identity. She is now someone who interprets emotional conflict as enforceable imbalance. This is a major escalation. Because Jocelyn equals emotional claim, Garrett moral confusion, Arista reality rebalancer with supernatural authority. When she says others are more flexible, that line is doing a lot of work. It implies she recognizes moral hierarchy, she sees human emotional rules as optional, she is beginning to assign consequences externally. That's where tension becomes dangerous. The sand ritual scene is a turning point. This is the pivot of the chapter. You move from relationship drama to mythic interference in causality. Key moment. I may even flood the whole world. This is not said like a threat. It's said like a forecast of scale under emotional stress. Then you follow it with unknown tongue, light activation, transformation like energy behavior, Garrett's fear response, Miri's fascination. That combination establishes Arista is no longer just secretly powerful, she is emotionally causal at world scale potential. Even if she did nothing major, the presentation matters. The ending line is very strong. It is out of my hands, love. Whatever happens next is entirely up to her. This is chilling in a very controlled way because she is claiming innocence while clearly altering conditions, while maintaining emotional closeness to Garrett. That combination is what makes it unsettling. Where you can strengthen it further, clarify Arista's act in the sand scene. Right now, it's intentionally ambiguous, which fits her, but you may want to decide one of two directions. Option A, literal magic effect has happened. Then you should see immediate environmental reaction, sea tide shift, air pressure change, distant disturbance. Option B, psychological symbolic binding. Then emphasize Garrett's perception uncertainty, Miri's misinterpretation, no measurable change, only emotional weight. Right now it sits between both, which is fine, but tightening it will increase impact. Garrett needs one clear internal reaction to Arista's ownership shift. This moment, he belonged to her. This is huge. But Garrett doesn't fully react to it internally yet. You could sharpen it with one sentence of resistance or dread, like a reflex rejection he doesn't voice, or recognition that something in him agrees against his will. Because right now it lands, but it doesn't echo yet. Miri's role is becoming myth witness. This is good, but you should be careful. She is rapidly evolving into a character who validates supernatural reality. That's powerful, but if overused, she becomes an exposition confirmation device. To keep her strong, occasionally let her misread things or interpret divine acts as mundane. Right now, she is slightly too aligned with Arista's mystique. Emotional triangle is now fully assembled. You now have Jocelyn, claimed through history, romance, and entitlement. Arista, claimed through emotional bonding and supernatural inevitability. Garrett, moral anchor dissolving under competing truth systems. This is good. But the stakes are now clear enough that future chapters should start escalating consequences rather than just encounters. Big structural insight. This chapter quietly changes the genre tension of your story. You are no longer writing court romance fantasy with magical undertones. You are now writing romantic political drama where emotional bonds alter physical reality. That's a major tonal upgrade, but it also means emotional decisions must start having system-level consequences. Arista's actions are now potentially world-altering responses to interpersonal imbalance. This is a high-quality escalation chapter. It accomplishes emotional fallout from Jocelyn's scene, consolidation of Arista and Miri bond, introduction of supernatural consequence logic, Garrett's psychological destabilization, and subtle foreshadowing of scale expansion. Scored 9.2 out of 10, not because anything is missing structurally, but because you're now at the point where every emotional beat is starting to imply geopolitical or mythological consequences. That's a powerful place to be, but it requires increasing precision in how you let magic ambiguity function. And that's chapter 4.5. File, open, folders, drowning. 3,208 words. I remember this chapter now. C, Control V. It's already doing a lot of things well. Strong momentum, clear escalation. In a very controlled pressure system built between Arista's presence, Kaline's recognition, and the court's political paranoia, the scene feels like it's actively trying to tip into a coup-level misunderstanding at any moment. That said, there are a few craft issues that are starting to stack up and dilute the impact of your strongest moments. Repetition is starting to blunt tension. You lean heavily on repeated structures for emphasis. Silence fell, the storm, the sky darkened. He felt the pressure, etc. Individually, they work. Collectively, they start to flatten escalation because the reader stops feeling new escalation and starts feeling pattern recognition. For example, silence followed, a hush fell heavier than before, silence swallowed the hall. These are all doing the same job. Pick the strongest one per beat and let the action or dialogue carry the rest. Arista's power reveal is strong but slightly overstated. The Abitria moment is one of your best beats. Kaline's recognition, the beneath your maps line, the storm reacting is solid mythic framing, but you undercut it slightly by stacking explanations immediately after emotional intensity. Cursed explanation, throne ambition, political rebuttal. It becomes argumentative too quickly after a mystical reveal. Suggestion, let the revelation breathe for 2 to 3 exchanges before shifting back in political positioning. Right now it goes mythic identity reveal, immediate policy debate. That jump reduces awe. Dialogue, voice consistency, Albrecht, and court tone. Albrecht is strong as a rigid institutional voice, but his lines occasionally drift into modern phrasing like questionable affairs, try me, settle questionable affairs. He works best when his language feels procedural. Hello? Hello?
Hi, my name is Courtney, and I'm calling from the National Movement Event.
Awesome. More spam calls. I clicked on the wrong thing online. Joy. Arista versus Kaline is your real engine here. This is the most important structural element in the chapter, and it's starting to form clearly. Arista's sovereign claim, mythic authority, possession language, Kaline, historical containment, forgotten knowledge, institutional memory. This is excellent, but right now they don't directly collide yet. They orbit each other. You're close to a very strong moment when Kaline recognizes Abitria, Arista recognizes that recognition. That's your ignition point. You can push it further by letting one of them break composure first, even slightly. Garrett's internal conflict is slightly under-leveraged in the court scene. He is physically present, politically central, romantically central, but emotionally reactive rather than decisive. He gets pulled between claims, spoken about, defined by others, but he rarely asserts a clear internal position in public terms beyond comfort and peace. When Arista says, I will be married to a king, that's a huge existential claim, and Garrett's response is mostly soft refusal. This is fine for character, but in a court scene, it makes him feel slightly passive in a moment that is structurally about succession pressure. Even a small line like, you do not get to decide that for me, would sharply re-anchor him as a political actor, not just a relational one. Belane's subplot is drifting into redundancy. Belane has jealousy, class resentment, accusation role. But she's repeating a function already covered by Isolde and court murmuring, Albrecht's suspicion. Unless you plan to escalate her into something sharper, e.g. direct political manipulation or alliance building, she risks becoming a noise amplifier rather than a distinct force. Strongest moments for clarity. The best sequence in this entire passage is Abitria reveal, Kaline recognition, storm reaction, I come from a vast kingdom beneath your maps. That's your core myth access. Everything else should either escalate the tension or frame its consequences. It's not much of a review, but see, I have a 5.5, and a 5_6. Okay. This is where it gets confusing. So I want 5_6. Oh, I have emergent chapter 5_6, and then 5_6 part 2, and 5.5. Holy shit. So it goes 5_6, 5_6 part 2, and then 5.5. I think that's right. This is a strong pivot scene. It finally locks Garth into something more than just ideological opposition. He's now actively structuring policy, alliance, and narrative control. The dynamic between the brothers is clear, but more importantly, the court conflict has graduated into state instability. That said, there are a few craft and structural issues. Craft and structural issues that are starting to matter more because your story is scaling to political thriller plus mythic romance plus court intrigue simultaneously. You now have a clear thematic access, but it's slightly buried. At the core of this scene is not food, trade, or even arista. It is morality a foundation of strength or a luxury of it? Garth argues morality is performative, strength is adaptability and exploitation. Garrett argues morality is structural strength and legitimacy. That's excellent, but right now it's wrapped in long trade logistics, food descriptions, servant activity padding. So the philosophical spine is occasionally hard to feel in real time, fixed directionally. Let 2 to 3 of the dialogue exchanges be slightly shorter and sharper. You don't need to reduce content, just reduce buffer sentences between ideological blows. Garth is becoming dangerously close to competent villain syndrome. You're doing something risky and usually good, making the antagonist intellectually coherent. But right now, Garth understands economics, understands diplomacy, understands perception management, anticipates counter-arguments. He's starting to feel like he is right in a modern policy sense, not just a morally compromised noble. That's fine if intentional, but you need one of those destabilizers or he will outgrow Garrett as a believable opposing force. Option A, best for your tone. Give Garth a blind spot rooted in appetite, not logic. He sees systems but always reduces people to instruments. Option B, let him occasionally misread emotional consequences, Arista, the king, etc. Right now, he's too consistent. Garrett's table flipped moment is great, but slightly under-telegraphed. The table destruction is satisfying, but emotionally it arrives a bit suddenly relative to his tone. He goes controlled ideological debate, quiet moral accusation, instant physical rupture. It works, but you could sharpen it by inserting a single internal snap point, even minimal, like that was enough or no more. Right now it feels like strength activation rather than decision. Chef Pomeroy is accidentally pulling focus. He appears repeatedly in laughter beats, reactions, tension, diffusion. Right now he functions like a court pressure valve, but he's starting to siphon attention during ideological peaks. Unless he becomes important later, consider reducing him to one reaction line per scene max, or making him fully silent background presence. Otherwise, he competes with Garth during your high tension exchange. The trade slavery argument is your strongest section and slightly overextended. This exchange, Velgreth trade, Chaldean slavery, we just purchase what already exists. This is excellent moral logic tension, but it repeats the same structure 2 to 3 times: accusation, justification, counter, escalation, restatement. You can tighten it by letting one argument land fully instead of cycling multiple variants of it. The strongest version is actually trade is not endorsement, it is survival. That is Garth's ideological core in one line. Everything else can orbit that. The final threat lands well, but needs sharper asymmetry. Garth's closing line, we will see how righteous you sound when that woman of yours is placed under oath. This is good because it shifts from ideology to leverage. It introduces Arista as politically vulnerable, but Garrett's response is mostly physical departure, fist clench. You might be missing a chance to crystallize. Garrett realizes Arista is now a politically liability, not just a partner. Even a subtle internal beat would elevate the ending from brother conflict scene to irreversible escalation. Structural takeaway important. You are consistently writing in a pattern, 3-layer scene stack. Sensory domestic realism, ideological debate, latent threat reveal. This is actually very strong architecture, but right now all 3 layers are weighted equally in pacing, which makes escalation feel slightly diffused. The improvement rule. Layer 1 should shrink as tension rises. Layer 2 should sharpen. Layer 3 should dominate the ending. You already do this in the last 20% of the scene. You just need to extend that compression upward slightly earlier. Bottom line, this is a solid turning point chapter scene. What it successfully does: elevates Garth into ideological antagonist, connects politics directly to Arista, introduces leverage-based conflict, oath, trade, foreign influence, ends with irreversible fracture between brothers. That's starting to matter now. Tightening philosophical clarity, preventing secondary characters from diffusing tension, and sharpening escalation timing, especially Garrett's physical reaction. If you want, next I can help you with, okay, I don't need any compression or anything. Let's see. Five point five, part 2. No, 5_6, part 2. Am I missing a chapter? I feel like I'm missing a chapter. precedes the last one. Chapter doing a lot of good structural work. It clarifies the ideological fault between Garrett and Arista, restraint versus authority, and it cleanly escalates their emotional intimacy into political incompatibility. The bones are strong. What's holding it back is mostly density and redundancy, especially in dialogue framing and repeated argument beats. What's working well: clear thematic opposition, Garrett, restraint, fear of corruption, Arista, necessity of force, legitimacy of authority. That's a solid philosophical spine. Emotional progression: the kiss, restraint, rejection is effective. The reversal is stronger than the simple consummation scene would have been. Arista's control of space. She consistently leads the emotional geometry of the room. Has consistent characterization and good power dynamics. The final separation in bed, the physical distance mirroring ideological distance, lands well. What's weakening the scene? Repetition of the same argument in slightly different clothing. The dialogue cycles several times through force versus restraint, king as servant versus king as ruler, Garth is unfit, Garth is merely clever, you are afraid of your own strength. Each pass adds intensity, but not as much new information. It starts to feel like the same philosophical paragraph being respoken. Fix: each exchange should advance the argument or reveal new information, not restate the premise. Right now it often rephrases the same moral axis. Arista's rhetoric becomes slightly too omniscient philosopher. She frequently speaks in absolute diagnostic statements about Garrett. You fear that, you are afraid that, you distrust. This is effective in small doses, but stacked continuously it flattens her into a correct oracle voice rather than a persuasive partner. Fix: let her be wrong sometimes, or emotionally partial, or let Garrett successfully push back at least once in a way that forces her to adjust. Garrett's voice occasionally loses texture. Garrett starts strong, moral restraint, political fear, but during the middle philosophical exchanges he becomes mostly a reactive mirror. He often restates her point in simpler terms, confirms her framing, yes or no, I understand, yields emotional ground repeatedly. So the scene subtly shifts from debate to Arista teaching Garrett what he already internally agrees with but fears acting on. Fix: give Garrett at least one structural win in the argument where he reframes her position instead of absorbing it. Physical intimacy timing is slightly overloaded. The transition, ideological climax, sudden physical escalation, interruption, controlled denial, maid entrance, separation. It works conceptually, but the kiss plus restraint plus undressing plus emotional withdrawal happens very fast, relative to the heavy philosophy preceding it. Fix options: either extend the physical moment slightly so it matches the weight of the debate, or reduce it to a sharper, more symbolic gesture, kiss or restraint moment, not both layered as fully as they are. Right now, it slightly risks feeling like two climaxes competing. The ending agreement with Miri feels tonally abrupt. No, they said at once. Works conceptually, unity through reversal, but it lands a bit sitcom clean after heavy emotional and political tension. It's not wrong, it just snaps shut quickly. Structural suggestion, big picture. This chapter is essentially three scenes trying to live as one: ideological debate, intimate power struggle, and separation epilogue. Right now they are tightly interwoven, which creates intensity but also emotional fatigue. If you ever revise, consider slightly segregating them with micro beats. Let philosophy peak, then intimacy interrupts it, then aftermath cool down, instead of all three oscillating simultaneously. When quiet but an important observation, Arista is written as politically assertive, philosophically dominate, emotionally controlled, physically initiating. That's compelling, but it creates a risk. Garrett becomes the object being shaped rather than an equal ideological force. If that's intentional, it works. If not, you may want to give him one moment where he alters her trajectory, even slightly. Otherwise, she dominates not just the relationship, but the thematic argument of the entire chapter. Okay. I don't even know if I have time. Like, this is almost 2 hours, and it looks like I'm actually going to get my shift tonight. So 7 pages, 2,380 words on this one. This is one of your strongest structural chapters so far in terms of thematic integration. The sparring isn't just action, it's philosophy made physical. Corvin functions as a very effective externalization of Garrett's internal conflict, and the Miri thread as a nice echo of your broader intimacy power themes. That said, there are a few craft issues that are starting to accumulate, and they're worth tightening before they become noise. What's working well? Combat as dialogue, very strong. The sparring rhythm is doing real narrative work. Garrett, hesitation, moral framing, avoidance of escalation. Corvin, inevitability, embodied consequence, blunt truth. When Corvin says, but sometimes it seems you would rather do nothing than risk making a mistake, that lands because it's already been demonstrated physically in the sparring. This is good. Show plus argument alignment. Corvin as emotional truth teller. He's one of your cleanest secondary characters because he doesn't over-philosophize. He anchors ideas in lived experience, class, species, stigma. He challenges Garrett without theatrical dominance. The moment where he says, you would make a good king, followed by immediate qualification through pressure, is especially strong because it removes comfort. The Miri reveal works structurally. The tonal shift into awkward masculinity plus vulnerability breaks the philosophical tension, humanizes Corvin, mirrors Garrett's Arista ambiguity, physical arrangement versus emotional meaning. It also subtly reinforces your recurring themes of relationships begin as utility and mutate into identity risk. What's weakening the chapter? Repetition of you should be king argument. Again, this is your biggest structural issue across multiple chapters now. You cycle through Arista, you should be king. Corvin, you should be king. Garth, you should be king, but corruptly. The reader starts to feel like the entire world is a pressure system pushing Garrett toward a predetermined outcome. That reduces tension instead of increasing it. Fix. Each character should want a different version of Garrett as king, not the same outcome. Right now, Arista, King Garrett, idealized authority. Corvin, King Garrett, protective stability. Garth, King Garrett, opportunistic control. They're all pointing at the same seat. They should be pointing at different definitions of what sits in it. Corvin's exposition gets slightly overextended in the Miri section, the part beastwomen can't really help themselves sometimes. That's why cat girls are such popular slaves. This is doing two things at once, world building and awkward sexual exposition, but it leans too much into explaining the social system directly rather than letting it stay embedded in shame, implication, or behavior. It also slightly risks flattening Miri into a category, beastwoman, right when you were previously giving her more personality. Fixed direction. Let Corvin be vague, embarrassed, and self-censoring more. The discomfort is stronger than the explanation. Garrett's emotional shift is slightly too clean at the end. This line, as they resume training, he resolved to at least tell his parents the truth that day. This is structurally convenient, but emotionally premature. Why? Because nothing in the scene actually resolves his internal conflict, it only intensifies it. So the resolution feels like consequence, clarity, decision, instead of consequence, deeper entanglement, unstable intent. Let it become a pressure, not a decision, something like he thought he might have to tell them. The idea frightened him more than Corvin's blade. Right now it's too cleanly teleological. Slight tonal drift into modern comedic cadence. Lines like, well played, you dog you, is that what I am to you, your punching bag? These work individually, but clustered they shift Corvin and Garrett into slightly modern buddy comedy register that clashes with your otherwise mythic political tone. Not wrong, just a tonal gear shift. The deeper structural issue, important, you are building three parallel systems: political legitimacy, Garth versus Garrett; romantic authority, Arista versus Garrett; physical social embodiment, Corvin and Miri versus the court system, but they all currently echo the same thesis: Garrett should accept power. The difference is only in tone, ethical, romantic, and pragmatic. That's why the story sometimes feels like it's surrounding Garrett rather than challenging him in genuinely divergent directions. If you want to sharpen this chapter further, high-impact revision target, ask yourself, what is Corvin uniquely saying that Arista and Garth cannot? Right now, the answer is you should be king, but more responsibly. That's the overlap problem. A stronger version would be if Corvin's argument were something like, power won't corrupt you, you're already being shaped by avoiding it. Or you don't fear becoming a tyrant, you fear being seen as one, or even your restraint is also a form of control. I like that. Something that cannot be collapsed into Arista's philosophy. Bottom line, this is a strong, readable chapter with excellent thematic cohesion, but it's starting to show repetition of ideological pressure and slightly over-explanatory world-building and emotional subplots. The biggest upgrade you can make isn't adding content, it's removing overlap. Fewer repeated you should be king variations, less explicit social explanation of the Miri reveal, slightly less clean emotional resolution at the end. Hmm. Okay, so the chapter that I just did comes after the chapter that I'm about to add. Okay, so this comes before he speaks to Garth. Alright. Come before the confrontation with Garth. Clearly, this is where I started to get confused about the order. So, this actually does read like it precedes the Garth confrontation, and the continuity problem you're feeling is real, but it's not a bad writing issue so much as a cause and effect sequencing issue. This chapter plants the investigation suspicion that later erupts in the table scene. What's working structurally, this chapter does three important things. Establishes slow poisoning suspicion. Paravel explicitly confirms he has been poisoned. Southrail enters the investigative thread. The jug becomes physical evidence. Reframes Garth's ambition as active threat. Earlier he was ideological, now he's plausibly lethal. Garth will start a thorough inquisition immediately as a political signal, gives Garrett motivational clarity. He leaves the room already resolved. He will have words with Garth. That directly fuels the confrontation chapter you pasted earlier, so narratively this is your inciting incident for escalation, not just a medical scene. Where the confusion comes from, right now the reader experiences Chapter A, emotional philosophical confrontation, Arista Corbin ideology, restraint versus power. Chapter B, Garth, food table confrontation, politics, trade, escalation. Chapter C, this one, poisoning reveal and court instability, but chronologically it should be CAB. Yeah. Because poison reveals, creates urgency, Corbin and Arista scene, shape Garrett's internal justification, Garth confrontation, external explosion. Instead, you currently have ideology, explosion, investigation that makes the poisoning feel like it comes after the war already started instead of being the spark. The deeper issue, and it's subtle but important, you actually have two different story engines competing here. External political thriller engine, poisoning, succession manipulation, Garth's trade and corruption, court intrigue. 2. Internal philosophical identity engine, Arista pushing kingship ideology, Corbin challenging restraint, and Garrett's fear of becoming a ruler. Right now, they're not cleanly braided, they're alternating dominance. So the reader subconsciously thinks, which is the main plot right now. How to fix it cleanly without rewriting everything. You don't need to rewrite scenes, you just need one structural adjustment. Option A, the cleanest reorder chapters. Poison discovery, this chapter, Corbin training, Arista pressure, Garth confrontation. That makes everything flow causally. And that's how it's supposed to be. It's just, I'm calling them 5_5, 5.5, 5 this, 5 that, because it's all part of what was originally going to be chapter 5. Because my outline, there was way too much for every single chapter that I had planned for it to be single chapters. And then the numerical order is just so fucked up. So I need to go through and rename everything, and maybe, I don't know. I want to finish the draft before I do that part, though. That's the issue that I'm having. So it's good that I'm looking at it now and I'm getting mental notes about it. It's just going to be, it's going to be a pain later, regardless. But now I'm not even giving numbers. I'm saying, like, this is chapter 6, but it's these characters, and so my order is all fucked up. Like, It's all kinds of messed up right now. Like my latest outline is based on days and not chapters. 1:52. So I got like 2.5 hours before I gotta be at the place to learn how to do the thing that I'm doing tonight. For almost $69. One craft note important. The king scene is strong, but it currently carries so many new names, relationships, comedic tension shifts that it momentarily competes with the poison reveal. You might want to subtly tighten this section so the emotional focus lands here. Garrett noticing his father's decline, Parable's diagnosis. Right now it briefly becomes Belane's satire scene, fungal metaphor humor, court dysfunction montage, then poison reveal. That diffusion slightly weakens the oh shit moment. Bottom line, you didn't write something out of place, you wrote a proper inciting incident that's currently sitting too late in the sequence. If you move this chapter earlier, it becomes the spine that justifies Garth's aggression, justifies Arista's urgency, justifies Garrett's final escalation. If you leave it where it is, the poisoning feels like a consequence of the table fight rather than the trigger behind it. If you want, I can map your entire arc, 3 or 4 chapters, into a tight chronological sequence with emotional beats so the escalation feels inevitable rather than episodic. Yeah, I'm way out of order now. I haven't lost the plot, but it's okay. Yeah. This chapter is meant to follow the confrontation with Garth and the table flip. As said, the order has gotten confused due to chapter naming conventions being off. So yeah, that's something I could do with it. This actually does slot into place better than you think. It's not that the order is wrong so much as your chapter titles are likely not reflecting narrative causality and investigative timeline. What you've got here is a classic court procedural escalation chapter that overlaps with emotional fallout from Garth confrontation. But I'll give you the clean placement logic first, then the structural issue, then a tightened continuity suggestion where this chapter actually belongs in story logic. The chapter clearly comes after the table flip confrontation with Garth because Garth is already in full authority mode. My brother returned framing. The Inquisition structure is already established. Arista and Garrett are already separated under suspicion. Paravel and Sothrael are already active investigators. The poison theory has already matured into court-level accusations, so this is not before Garth conflict at all in narrative time. It is post-conflict escalation, institutional takeover of the investigation, political weaponization of medical findings. In other words, this is the chapter where Garth stops reacting emotionally and starts systemizing control. Why it feels out of order, your real problem, you didn't actually break chronology, you broke emotional continuity markers. Right now, Garth confrontation, emotional rupture, table flip, brotherly fracture. This chapter, procedural court drama, cold structured interrogation, but you don't have a strong transitional hinge scene that says, the argument is over, now the kingdom responds. So the reader feels like they time jumped backward when in reality you moved forward. The hidden structure you've accidentally built. You created a 3-phase arc. Phase 1, domestic instability, king declining, Arista tension, Garrett uncertainty. Phase 2, political rupture, Garth confrontation, table flip, authority challenge, emotional fracture in royal family. Phase 3, institutional investigations. This chapter, courtly inquisition begins, poison theory solidifies, suspects shift from abstract to proximity-based, suspicion becomes systematic. This chapter is actually the first half of Phase 3, not a prelude to Phase 2. The key thematic shift in this chapter, important. Notice what changes here. Before this chapter, something is wrong with the king. In this chapter, someone is doing it on purpose, repeatedly, physically close. That is a major escalation in narrative gravity. The moment Paravel says it requires proximity, that is your true hinge point. That's where the story stops being medical mystery and becomes a close-room political assassination thriller. Continuity fix, simple, not structural rewrite. If you want this to feel clean and sequence, you only need one bridging beat before this chapter. Add something like aftermath silence after Garth confrontation, court summoned for formal inquiry, Arista separated, Garrett denied access, investigation declared official. Even 5 to 8 lines is enough. Example, tone, by noon, Garth had ordered a formal inquisition, no private consultations, no unsupervised visits to the king. All testimony would be heard in sequence. That single paragraph locks your chronology. What you should not change. Do not reorder these chapters aggressively. You'll lose Garth's emotional authority shift, Paravel's humiliation arc, Sothrael's controlled unraveling of evidence, Garrett's growing isolation in court perception. These are already working in the correct causal direction. This chapter is not misplaced chronologically. It's misplaced in your labeling system and slightly missing a transition beat that tells the reader we are now in the formal investigative phase following the confrontation. So, I didn't even get into where I'm at right now, but I kind of feel like I need to deviate and do other shit. Well, never mind. Fuck. Here I was going to get ready for my delivery, and I just got the message due to low volume. Yeah, your block was canceled. Hi, Jack. Due to low volume, your block was canceled for April 26th, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Fuck. I wasn't thrilled about doing it, but I guess I'm slightly more disappointed at it suddenly being yanked away again. And so last Sunday, they took it away at like noon. Yesterday at 1, and today at like 2. It's annoying as hell. And then I actually got a message last night at like 5:54 saying there was a block available from 6:30 to 9, and it paid $80 instead of the $69 I was going to get for the block that I was supposed to do at 5 to 8 that they canceled on me, but I didn't have time to react. And as soon as I went to the app, it was already taken by somebody else. So, yeah. Fuck this. Okay. All right. Let's keep going. Let's get through the whole book. This is strong court escalation writing. Your procedural tension is working, but this chapter is doing a very specific kind of job in the narrative, and once you see it clearly, a couple of structural issues become obvious. I'll break it down cleanly. What this chapter actually is functionally. This is not just the next witness. This is your public reframing chapter. Garth is actively constructing a narrative in real time. First witness, emotional guilt, Aldrich. Second witness, implied proximity and physical presence, Arista's via kitchen claim. Third witness, Pomeroy, social defamation, character assassination. So the real arc is from medical suspicion to moral suspicion to identity-based suspicion. This is less about poison and more about manufacturing culpability in public space. That's why it feels intense, even though nothing new is technically proven. What's working very well. Garth's courtroom technique is coherent and escalating. He's not random. He's doing three things consistently: leading questions, controlled witness isolation, social amplification, let the court hear it framing. He's basically building a proto-Inquisition logic. Isolate, extract emotional confession, reinterpret as evidence. That's good political writing. Aldrich versus Pomeroy contrast is structurally smart. Aldrich, guilt, fragility, internal collapse. Pomeroy, confidence, gossip, external projection. That gives you emotional truth versus social lie tension. And Garrett sits in the middle, reacting appropriately. Garrett's emotional containment is believable. You're doing something subtle here. He almost intervenes multiple times, but keeps getting socially outmaneuvered. That reinforces he is morally present but politically reactive. Good setup for future authority shift. The main structural issue, this is important right now, Pomeroy's testimony is doing too many narrative jobs at once, which weakens clarity. He is simultaneously kitchen logistics witness, Arista alibi contradiction device, moral character assassin, rumor conduit, dox, beastman, prostitution claim. That's four roles in one mouth. So instead of damning testimony lands, it becomes information overload and credibility dilution. The real thematic conflict underneath, you may not have stated this clearly yet, this chapter is not actually about poisoning. It is about who gets to define Arista in public memory before truth is established. You currently have three competing narratives forming. Garth's narrative, controlled suspicion, proximity guilt, systematic suspicion. Court narrative, Pomeroy, gossip contamination, moral degradation. And Garrett's narrative, lived truth, direct experience contradiction. This is good, but you need to tighten the boundaries between them so the reader doesn't feel like they're blending. One key continuity improvement, high impact. You need to sharpen this moment. Pomeroy is lying. Right now it's felt, but it's not structurally anchored. Give Garrett one grounding anchor earlier in the scene, like Arista never left his sight, or Lady Isolde can confirm exact movements, or even a repeated internal certainty. Right now the reader is asked to hold court authority versus protagonist certainty versus no external validation. That can work, but only if Garrett's certainty is repeatedly reinforced. Garth's power is increasing, but slightly too clean. Garth is becoming very effective, but watch this. He currently never loses a witness cleanly, always gains narrative advantage, always redirects blame outward. That risks making him feel structurally invincible, not just politically skilled. Small suggestion. Let him miss once in a subtle way, like Aldrich's confession actually weakens his argument. Parable's findings contradict his implication. Or the Queen forces a procedural reset that delays him. Right now, he is too consistently winning the scene. The strongest moment in the chapter, you should lean into this. This line conceptually is your core escalation. There are whispers. She's been seen down by the docks. This is the turning point because it shifts from evidence to reputation warfare, from poison to identity destruction. That's your real midpoint of this chapter. You could even structurally highlight it more. Slight pause, room reaction, Garrett internal snap. Ending choice is good and important. He did not pursue, not yet. This is a clean restraint beat. It signals Garrett is being trained into patience or forced into political delay, or recognizing that truth cannot be chased physically. It's a good quiet hinge into the next escalation. Bottom line, this chapter is functioning well, but its core issue is too many narrative functions are being compressed into single witnesses, especially Pomeroy. Once you separate evidence, delivery, character assassination, and rumor propagation, the court sequence will feel sharper, more surgical, and more Garth-controlled. next chapter is the one I am struggling with the most. I have rewritten it at least. That's not how you spell that. At least. No, that's not how you spell that either. Damn you fingers. Do what I want. At least 5 times so far. This is the first pass. You're close on this one, but I'm going to be blunt in a useful way. This chapter is currently emotionally consistent, but structurally overloaded. It reads like Garrett's mental collapse and resolve are happening in the same breath, which makes the escalation feel less like a turn and more like a flood. That's why you've rewritten it 5 times. You're trying to fix clarity problems that are actually sequencing problems, not wording problems. Let's isolate what's actually going wrong, and I'll show you how to fix it cleanly. The core problem, you have 3 different chapters inside one. Right now, this scene is doing all of this at once. I actually quit writing for a little while because this chapter was such a pain in the ass. External trigger, court fallout, Pomeroy's testimony, Arista implicated publicly, Garth framed as manipulator. B. Emotional reaction, Garrett spiral, possessiveness, fear of loss, anger toward Garth, bodily sensation metaphors. C. Strategic pivot, political commitment shift, Garth has declared war, Garrett decides to act, truth versus perception philosophy. These are 3 different tempos: investigation, aftermath, romantic panic, and political resolution. They are currently stacked without separation, so the reader feels dazed instead of escalated. The biggest structural issue, Arista arrives too late in the emotional arc. By the time Garrett reaches her, you've already resolved his anger, escalated his paranoia, defined his ideology shift, framed Garth as an existential threat. So when he finally gets to Arista, the scene has nowhere left to go emotionally except repetition of intensity. That's why the reunion feels long instead of sharp. The real emotional spine you want, this is important, this chapter should only be about one thing. Garrett loses trust in the court and regains certainty in Arista. That's it. Everything else should support that, not compete with it. Right now, Arista is reassurance, romantic anger, ideological justification, and political symbol. That's too many roles for one scene beat. Where the writing is strongest, don't lose this. You actually have very strong material here. The wheel of perception versus truth idea, mass minds found their median. This is your philosophical thesis of the chapter. The bodily emotional distortion language, aches spreading through limbs, hollow stomach, tightening chest. This is good character, Garrett POV embodiment writing. And the war declaration realization, in attacking her, Garth had declared war. This is your clean turning point. The issue is everything around these moments is competing with them. The main issue in prose terms, over amplification. You are doing a thing where emotional intensity keeps stacking without release points. Example pattern, suspicion, anger, bodily ache metaphor, ideological critique, possessive love, existential framing, deeper possessiveness, philosophical abstraction, romantic ceiling bow. This creates what I'd call emotional compression without breathing intervals. So nothing lands, everything accumulates. What to cut or move, very specific, move out of this chapter. Extended philosophy about perception, fashion, wheel of fate. Repeated internal justification of Garth's motives, abstract political theory paragraph. These belong either in Garth Courtroom Aftermath chapter or internal monologue during travel and action. Condense this entire section. Garth was family, but what was family other than? This is important, but it should be half the length and placed after a break, not inside the emotional peak. What this chapter should be structurally, clean version. If you reduce it to its actual spine, it becomes Scene 1, Fallout. Garrett leaves the court, realizes Arista is under attack, understands Garth is shaping the narrative. Scene 2, Emotional break. Physical ache, panic, urgency, decision to go to her immediately. Scene 3, Confrontation with Arista. Brief reassurance exchange. Arista confirms suspicion framing. Garrett receives emotional stabilization. Scene 4, Decision point. Garth has declared war. Garrett chooses active opposition. That's it. Everything else is stylistic layering. The key tonal correction you need right now, Garrett's love reads like total ideological replacement of reality, and that's why it feels slightly unstable. And I'm going through a lot myself. That's why this chapter was really hard. Like, I was very emotionally charged and then I had to deal with some definite struggles when it came to this. A more grounded version should be love equals anchor, not replacement of all judgment. So instead of she is the only truth, you want she is the clearest truth available in a corrupted system. That single shift prevents the romance from swallowing the political plot. One important warning, story level, not stylistic. You're currently drifting Garrett into absolute romantic ideology. Binary moral framing, Arista equals truth, Garth equals corruption, total emotional delegation of judgment to Arista. That will eventually flatten tension unless you later challenge Arista's reliability or knowledge boundary in some way. Not saying make her evil. I kind of want to make her evil. Just that right now she is structurally becoming a perfect epistemic anchor, which reduces long-term narrative friction. Bottom line, this chapter isn't failing because it's overwritten. It's failing because you're trying to complete emotional escalation, philosophical framing, and political resolution in a single continuous breath. Once you separate those functions into beats, this becomes one of your strongest turning point chapters. And this is like the turning point chapter. This is where Garrett becomes defined and is taking action, or at least makes the decision to. So yeah, I'm just going to close these and dig them out later. Okay. So I got like 3 more chapters to pop in and review. And I wish I had been keeping track. You've got strong momentum here. The emotional stakes are clear, and the corridor sequence works as a pressure valve after the courtroom. What's tripping you up isn't the prose quality, it's load management. This chapter is trying to do too many turns. Romantic reaffirmation, political paranoia, magical disruption, comedic discomfort, and conspiracy escalation in one continuous emotional key. I'll first flag the structural issues, then give you a tightened rewrite pass that preserves your intent but makes it land harder. What's currently confusing in why tone collision in the opening. You start in romantic certainty, Arista intimacy, war mode Garrett, then immediately introduce Jocelyn's grotesque obsession, then pivot into magical possession and horror, then end on political intrigue, Boleyn watching. Those are 4 different genre registers in 2 pages. Arista's chant arrives without setup. Right now it reads like, oh, by the way, she can do this now. Even if it was implied earlier, the mechanism of how Wyatt surfaces here needs emotional continuity. Garrett's confrontation should trigger it, not just reveal it. Jocelyn is doing too much functionally. She is simultaneously romantic threat, political distraction, disease metaphor, and narrative trigger for Arista's power reveal. That overload makes the scene feel like it's moving pieces instead of escalating one pressure. Garrett's internal state flips too fast. He goes love clarity, rage clarity, sympathy, suspicion, tactical thinking. That can work, but right now it lacks hinge moments. A cleaner structural intent, what this chapter wants to be. At its core, this chapter is Garrett chooses Arista publicly and privately, and that emotional declaration accidentally triggers Arista's uncontrolled power, revealing her danger just as a political accusations are closing in. So the spine should be Garrett commits emotionally, Arista seen. Jocelyn tries to destabilize that bond, social poison. Arista reacts emotionally, power leaks. Garrett sees consequences immediately. Blame witnesses. Political weaponization begins. Revised edition, tightened, clarified. I'll keep your voice but reduce repetition and make causality clear. And then it's rewriting the chapter for me, which I hate. Why this version works better, blah, blah, blah. I'm not using that. This is the last chapter that I finished. You're very close here structurally. The tension, escalation, and reversal in Dunrick's scene all work. The main issue isn't ideas, it's load. The chapter is trying to carry political interrogation, Garrett's emotional arc, Garth's control struggle, and Dunrick's coup of the room all at once. So the prose starts to sprawl and repeat beats, especially accusations, reaction, reaction to reaction. I'll break down what's working, what's muddy, and then give you a tightened rewrite pass of the final Dunrick sequence so you can see how to compress without losing bite. What's working well, Dunrick's voice, grounded, insulting, moral but brutal. He breaks the courtroom rhythm, which is exactly what this scene needs. Power inversion moment, Garth losing narrative control is strong and earned after Corbin. Garrett's emotional stabilization through external chaos. Him laughing, then realizing Crown sits on heads, power lives in hearts is a good thematic turn. The court reacting as a living organism, nobles, servants, guards, splitting loyalties is excellent. What's weakening the scene? Repetition of accusation structure. You cycle this pattern multiple times. Garth accuses, witness responds, Garth presses, witness escalates, crowd reacts. It works once per witness, but with Dunrick, it repeats inside the same exchange, so the tension flattens instead of escalating. Dunrick escalates too evenly. He's already at 100% moral indictment early, then keeps going. That removes ramping tension. You want phase 1, deflection and humor. Phase 2, insight, implication. Phase 3, accusation that destabilizes Garth. Right now, he starts at phase 2. Over-explaining the theme. Lines like crowns sat on heads but power lived in hearts are good, but they arrive after already showing it, so it risks feeling like narration summarizing its own climax. Slight overloading of insults. You have multiple near-synonymous insults stacked. Greedy, pompous, windbag, entitlement seeker, etc. 1 or 2 sharp identity cuts land harder than 6 variations. A tightened version of Dunrick climax, example, rewrite. This keeps your intent but compresses rhythm and sharpens escalation. Yeah, and it's chat getting into that mode where it just wants to write for me. The shift there is important. Less repetition, clear escalation phases, stronger room reaction beats, final line lands instead of continues, big structural suggestion, important. Right now your chapter's climax is splitting between Corbin proving stability, Dunrick destabilizing Garth. That's good, but Garrett's arc is slightly buried. If you want this chapter to hit harder, consider ending with a Garrett perception shift immediately after Dunrick, something like, for the first time, Garrett did not see his brother as clever. He saw him as seen. Right now, that thematic turn is there, but it's diluted inside the narrative flow. I can help you compress the entire chapter. All right. All right. 4,502 words, and I'm not done with this chapter yet. This is the one that I'm currently on. This is the chapter I am currently on in the draft. Draft is not done yet. Yeah, strong escalation here, but this section is currently dealing too many reveal pivots in one breath, which is why it feels like it's starting to wobble. Bayless, misinformation theater, good. Garrett, rebuttal, social fracture, good. Garth, control attempt, good. Garrett, counter lawyer move, good. Priestess arrives, meta authority shift, very good, then sudden pivot to Jocelyn accusation, big tonal spike. The last shift is where things risk losing clarity because the reader is still processing. Arista is being framed through perception warfare, and suddenly the courtroom flips to Jocelyn is the magical contamination vector. Both are interesting, but right now they compete instead of stacking. It's working extremely well. Garth's strategy is consistent and believable. He's not searching for truth. He is controlling narrative density, forcing reasonable suspicion accumulation, letting courts self-convince. That's good political logic writing. Priestess Kaline is a strong destabilizer. She introduces a different epistemology, not gossip, not politics, aura-based interpretation. This is excellent because it threatens both sides. Garrett's role is sharpening. He's no longer reactive. He's correcting narratives, defending Arista publicly, starting to challenge class assumptions. This is your strongest Garrett section so far in the chapter. What is structurally breaking important? Mystical deduction jump is too fast. Kaline goes Arista aura, inherited power, attachments, Jocelyn is target. That's a hard logic leap without intermediate grounding. Even in fantasy logic, readers need a bridge like what attachments look like, how they manifest, why Jocelyn is visible in that system. Right now it feels like I looked at her aura, therefore Jocelyn did it. Jocelyn reveal arrives too explosively. You've already used public embarrassment, Bayless, emotional destabilization, Garth versus Garrett, and authority shift, Priestess. So Jocelyn becomes a fourth climax, not a continuation, result diminishing impact. Garth loses agency slightly in the last beat. He sets up Arista suspicion, magical framing, political narrative control. Then Priestess plus Jocelyn pivot removes him from the center too abruptly. He should react in adaptation, not just get displaced. The core improvement you need, you don't need fewer events, you need cleaner hierarchy of accusation layers. Right now, Arista, city rumors, magic aura, Jocelyn accusation. What you want is Arista suspicion, social, Arista magic framing, mystical, Jocelyn as conduit, not sudden culprit, mechanical explanation, then implication of the true actor remains open. Suggested structural fix, key insight, instead of Jocelyn as the attachment, make it Jocelyn as a conduit, residue, secondary resonance. That preserves mystery, ongoing tension, avoids premature resolution, example tightening of the K-line Jocelyn pivot, rewrite past, this keeps your voice but slows the reveal so it lands harder, blah blah blah. Why this works better, Jocelyn becomes a signal, not a conclusion, Garth stays strategic, not displaced, Kaline remains uncertain but precise, Garrett's suspicion can now evolve instead of resolve. One bigger craft note important for your book tone. You're very good at ideological courtroom tension, layered manipulation, emotional undercurrents under dialogue, but your bigger risk is over-resolving mysteries too early in public scenes. Right now, this chapter is feeling like it wants to solve the poisoning plot when it should be stronger if it narrows suspects, deepens contradictions, increases paranoia, but does not confirm direction yet. All right. So this section proves Arista can be a menace, but not to who the Inquisition is about. The king. What is your feedback or opinion about the entire story so far, since this is where it currently leaves off? I suspect there is about 18 more chapters to go before this is done. You build a court inquisition sequence that is doing a lot of heavy lifting, political tension, character revelation through rhetoric, and a steadily escalating truth versus perception collapse. At its best, it reads like a staged trial that slowly stops being about evidence and becomes about control of narrative, which is exactly what you want for this kind of arc. I'll break feedback into 3 layers: what's working strongly, what's currently weakening clarity and impact, and what I think you'd be careful about over the next 18 chapters. What's working very well. Garth, as a procedural manipulator antagonist, Garth is strongest when he's not just evil, but procedurally correct while being morally inverted. He doesn't openly fabricate chaos. He structures a system that produces the outcome he wants. That's compelling because it feels like a real institutional villain. Hey, what's up? I've heard Cloud is good. I haven't used it yet. I think why I like using ChatGPT is that I know it's dumb. So it's not doing as much work for me. But yeah, I need to check out Claude for sure. Garth as a procedural manipulator antagonist. Garth is strongest when he's not just evil, but procedurally correct while being morally inverted. He doesn't openly fabricate chaos. He structures a system that produces the outcome he wants. That's compelling because it feels like a real institutional villain. The best moments are when he reframes testimony as inevitability rather than inquiry. He uses order, procedure, and courtesy as weapons. He weaponizes respectability, Lady Valus, nobility, etc. That's solid political antagonism writing. The court as a pressure cooker of identity. You're doing something subtle but important. Every witness isn't just giving evidence, they're revealing who they are under social pressure. Corvin, disciplined integrity under manipulation. Dunrick, blunt moral inversion of court etiquette. Valus, mythologizing insecurity. Kaline, epistemic clarity that destabilizes authority. Jocelyn, emotional, biological instability becoming public spectacle. This is good ensemble design. The trial becomes a truth reactor. Arista as destabilizing presence, not just victim/target. You're absolutely right in your note. Arista is increasingly framed as a systemic anomaly, not just a suspect. Important, the court cannot categorize her cleanly. Not politically legible, not morally legible, not metaphysically legible. Elf, human, water, magic, ambiguity. That's a strong fantasy trope. When done carefully, the incomprehensible character someone institutions fail to process. Garrett's internal arc is coherent and escalating. Garrett is not static here, he's moving through stages. Protective love, institutional frustration, recognition of systemic corruption, readiness to oppose family structure, emerging willingness to seize power for protection. That trajectory is clear and readable. Where the chapter is currently weakening, the emotional tone sometimes overwrites itself. I do that a lot. There are passages where the prose intensifies metaphorically multiple times in the same beat, especially internal states like anger, love, and resolve. This creates a slight effect of emotion is being asserted repeatedly rather than allowed to land once. Example pattern: his heart clenched, his bones ached, his soul burned, then his resolve hardened like stone. Individually fine, but stacked too closely, it dilutes impact. Fixed direction, pick one physical metaphor per emotional beat, then let dialogue action carry the rest. The court becomes slightly too competent at exposition. Right now, several witnesses, especially Valus and Kaline, are very effective at delivering structured narrative conclusions. The risk is they feel like author mouthpieces for inference rather than unreliable, partial humans in conflict. Even Kaline, who is excellent conceptually, sometimes explains magic in a way that feels like system documentation instead of trial scene. Fixed direction, let them be wrong in smaller ways, or self-interested in interpretation, even when correct about facts. The accusation structure is becoming predictable, but not yet broken. Here's a repeating rhythm forming. Witness enters, Garth frames them, Garrett interrupts or observes. Witnesses appears credible but biased. Garrett dismantles or reframes, court shifts perception. This is working, but if it continues unchanged for 18 more chapters, tension will plateau. Fixed direction. You'll want at least 2 to 3 witnesses later who partially implicate Garrett or Arista in credible ways, or force Garrett to lose rhetorical control briefly, or cannot be cleanly debunked in court. Arista's power reveal is intriguing, but currently asymmetric. You've hinted Arista can be dangerous, otherworldly, especially in the Jocelyn scene, but the court is interpreting her as witch, mystery, suspicious outsider. However, the reader still lacks a clear rule set, cost, or consequence for her influence. Right now, her menace is atmospheric, reactive, situational, not structurally terrifying in a defined way. Fixed direction. Over upcoming chapters, you'll want to clarify what she does unintentionally Okay. I mean, that's covered in earlier chapters. What she cannot control, what other risks are being near her influence. That'll make the court's fear feel more grounded. Big picture story assessment, where you are now. You're currently in what I'd call the institutional collapse arc, midpoint escalation phase. Core strengths of your story so far: strong court politics structure, clear ideological conflict, truth versus narrative control, distinct voice-driven characters. Dunrick especially is excellent. A romance that is actively politically destabilizing, not just emotional. Core risk areas: over-reliance on rhetorical victories in court scenes, emotional repetition instead of escalation variety, Arista's threat model still being too abstract. What I think you should aim for the next 18 chapters, if you want the arc to land smoothly, you'll likely need a failed trial moment, at least one point where Garrett cannot rebut effectively, truth does not win rhetorically, court rules in favor of narrative despite evidence. This will prevent the court always resolved through clever speech pattern. A Garrett fracture moment, not just anger, something like he realizes protecting Arista may require becoming what he hates, or realizes Garth might not be wrong about everything, just dangerous in method, or Arista does something that cannot be easily morally justified in court. Arista stepping out of being interpreted. Right now she is interpreted by others, witch, noble, outsider, suspect, love interest. At some point she should act independently in a way that bypasses court narrative entirely, or make a choice that contradicts Garrett's understanding of her. This is where she becomes fully agentic, not symbolic. Final overall opinion. You've got a strong political fantasy courtroom arc with unusually good ensemble differentiation, and the Dunrick K-line segments in particular show you understand how to give ideology different voices rather than just positions. The main thing standing between very good and excellent is not plot, it's control of rhetorical rhythm and escalation diversity. If you want, I can map the next 18 chapters into escalation beats so you don't plateau court tension, or help you design 2 to 3 break-the-pattern witnesses that destabilize Garrett instead of confirming him, or help clarify Arista's power system so her menace becomes structurally consistent instead of atmospheric. Just tell me what direction you want next. Control C. Oh, what's up? How you doing, Stokes? This is the outline for the remainder and some of what's written. I'm currently on day 2 because I have almost given up on chapter numbering at this point. This is a strong structural spine, even more than the prose. What you've built here is a clear escalation engine with thematic consistency. I'll give you an honest high-level read first, then the important warnings so you don't accidentally weaken what you've already set up. Overall verdict, big picture, you're writing a court trial, political collapse, revelation, coronation myth arc with a romance at its center, but functionally it behaves like a legal system trying to classify something it cannot define, while the protagonist slowly realizes the system itself is the real antagonist. That's good. It's a coherent thematic engine. The strongest underlying idea in your whole outline is truth is not discovered, it is enforced by whoever controls the narrative frame. Garth represents enforcement, Arista disrupts classification, Garrett is the bridge between emotional truth and institutional truth. That triangle is working. Like, it feels like I've shifted stories as I've been writing, as I've gone into my high point. Like, I reach the apex of my plot, and then it's altered into something else. And so I'm trying to stay true to the core and allow it to grow the way it's naturally supposed to. What's very strong in your outline? Escalation is properly tiered. This is rare and good. You've correctly structured escalation in layers. Days 1 to 3, perception warfare, testimony, rumor, interpretation. Day 4, metaphysical legitimacy enters. Yggdra, Kaline, Arista, identity, exposure. It's neat that it lumped those three together, because those three, I see that as my coven that's forming in the book. So that's like a subplot that's going to take me into other stuff. Day 5, direct confrontation, public rupture. Day 6, collapse of restraint, duels, attempted execution energy. Day 7, institutional reset, king reveals truth, Garrett inherits authority. Epilogue, myth stabilization, future disruption hook. This is structurally sound. It actually builds pressure instead of repeating it. You're using witnesses correctly as ideological masks. This is one of your best mechanics. Corvin, institutional integrity. Dunrick, moral brute truth. Valus, performative aristocratic rot. Kaline, metaphysical epistemology. Yggdra, chaotic natural truth and transactional honesty. Miri, grounded loyalty and observational truth. This is not just witnesses giving testimony. This is philosophical fragmentation of truth. That's excellent fantasy courtroom writing. Did not mean to write courtroom shit, but that just it's where the story is taking itself over, basically. Arista is correctly shifting from accused to category error. This is the most important arc you're building. At first, she is suspect, then she is anomaly, then she is force, then she is system actor, controls the king's fate, then she is political legitimacy itself, queen-level entity. That progression is strong. Garth is not just villainous, he's procedurally corrupt. This matters a lot. You've avoided cartoon villain most of the time by making him persuasive, structured, institutionally fluent, rhetorically adaptive. His failure is not stupidity, it's inability to accept epistemic defeat. That's a good antagonist writing. The biggest risks in your outline, there are places where the story could weaken if not tuned carefully. The witness ladder problem, main structural risk. Right now the trial structure risks becoming each witness more extreme claim, Garrett refutes, court shifts. Even though you vary content, the mechanical rhythm is similar. Yeah. Why this matters. Readers subconsciously detect repetition even when content differs. Fixed direction. You need at least 2 disruptions. A witness Garrett cannot fully refute. Someone whose claim is partially true, partially unverifiable, emotionally damaging, politically useful to Garth instead, regardless of truth. B, a moment where Garrett's interpretation is wrong, not morally wrong, factually incomplete. This is critical for tension longevity. Arista risks becoming overpowered revelation stacking. You're building curse magic, aura detection, weather storm escalation, sea witch transformation, healing the king, emotional manipulation field effects. This is fine if controlled, but there is a danger. She becomes a plot resolution entity rather than a character under constraint. Fixed direction. Every time she shows power, you should define 1 cost. Emotional instability, loss of control, dependency, political exposure risk, or moral regret or ambiguity. I do. I have all of those in there. Every single one. Emotional instability, she causes storms. Loss of control, she can't help cursing Jocelyn and having the repercussion tie back to her. Dependency, ocean recharge, she has to do that. Political exposure risk, again, cursing Jocelyn. And moral regret or ambiguity. Well, okay, Arista doesn't do regret. Or she really doesn't do morality either. Like she's an amoral, slightly villainous character. That's part of her appeal. Garrett's internal arc may become too linear toward righteous king. Right now, Garrett is trending love, protection, opposition, duelist, heir, king. That's clean, but slightly too clean. Risk, he becomes inevitable rather than forced. Yeah. Fixed direction. Introduce at least one of these. Garrett doubts Arista's morality, briefly, seriously. Yeah. Garrett considers stepping away again, not just embracing kingship. Yeah. Garrett realizes he may be manipulated emotionally, Arista or Garth or both. Yes. I definitely want there to be an undertone where Arista could be manipulating him and maybe even everything that's going on. I want that to be an undercurrent that people are kind of like, is she or no? Garrett makes a decision that harms someone unintended. He needs at least 1 moral fracture before coronation. The court converts into combat. Transition needs tightening. Day 6 to 7 escalations include duel, magical choke attempt, public accusations, king fainting, banishment decisions. This is fine, but there is a tonal risk. The court stops feeling like a system and starts feeling like a stage for rapid dramatic turns. Yeah, I went very Hamlet. Hamlet is one of my undercurrents for the whole thing. That's kind of my basis for Garrett's whole character. So yeah, I mean, Hamlet is a lot of slow build-up and deliberation, and then just you have your final scene and everything just sort of falls. Fixed direction. Make sure each escalation is logically forced by previous constraint removal, not just escalation for climax. Example, legal system breaks, duel becomes legal substitute. Duel breaks, magic becomes truth arbitration. Magic fails, king becomes final authority. That chain needs to feel inevitable, not convenient. Epilogue hook is good but slightly clean. Abitria arrives is a strong hook, but right now the ending suggests system restored, kingdom stabilized, romance completed. That risks undercutting your strongest theme, truth and stability. Suggestion, make sure Abitria introduces contradiction of Arista's origin story, or proof she is not what court concluded, or claim she is political weapon, not natural being. Or implication that the truth established by was local and incomplete. This preserves long-term narrative depth. While you are actually writing the hidden structure, on a deeper level, your story is not just romance, courtroom drama, or political fantasy. It is a civilization trying to decide whether love, power, or narrative control determines reality. And each faction represents Garth, narrative control via institutions; Arista, reality that resists classification; Garrett, emotional truth trying to become political authority. That triangle is your real engine. Final assessment. You are very close to something structurally strong and thematically consistent. The writing strengths are already there. Strong character voices, strong ideological differentiation, escalating court mechanics, clear emotional core. The main thing you need to guard against in the remaining chapters is repetition of escalation patterns and loss of uncertainty. If you fix that, this stops being good courtly fantasy and becomes something closer to a political myth about truth failing under institutional pressure. A political myth. Holy fuck, I'm writing a political myth. Wow. Okay. If you want next step help, I can do these very effectively. Map day 1 to 7 into act structures with tension curves, so pacing never flattens. Identify 3 specific witnesses. Witness additions that would break your current pattern or help you design the Abitria reveal so it retroactively destabilizes everything that came before. Just tell me. None of that. I'm good. I have a better idea as to what I'm writing. I've gone through the whole thing in these 3 hours of streaming and loading in everything that I've written so far, so I have an idea of what to go for. I stopped taking notes at one point, but yeah, that's where I wasn't worried about chapter breaks so much like I was in the beginning, where I was writing these long sections that clearly needed to be divided up. So those are the useful notes. But now it's structuring, ordering, and really just trying to finish this damn draft. Like I said, I've got like 18 chapters left. When I first started this book, it was supposed to be a 17-chapter book. So yeah, the story has definitely gotten away from me, and I want it done. I want this draft done. I want to get through the edit phases. It's going to be multiple edits. Like, first I got to go through and I got to do it structurally, and I'm going to have to do reads and rereads for almost every single character to make sure that they're included properly. Yeah, so this is going to be a long structural fix first. First I'm going to have to divide it up into chapters cleanly, and then check each character's plot. Like, their growth is evident throughout the whole thing and not just like conveniently placed. So yeah, I got a lot to do. I mean, right now it's finishing the chapter that I'm currently on, but I feel like I'm definitely on the downward cycle of the story, so things are falling into place easier, but there's definitely some structure, especially at my peak of action. That revelation scene, it's sort of like a romantic moment between Garrett and Arista where he commits to her. Like, that's a very Hamlet type scene that I need to work on some more. But like I said, I've written that one like 5 times. So my voice is almost gone, and disappointed that my My delivery block got canceled again, so I'm not going to be making any money today. So I got to continue other things like try to write a fucking Substack or something. So thank you for coming in, Fate 315. Thank you, Stokes. I appreciate your hello. I have no more voice for this, so I gotta go drink more tea and figure out how I'm gonna be spending my evening hours. So peace out. Yeah, I'm done. It's